I'm Carmen Campuzano, the principal at Davis Bilingual Magnet. And today we had Erik Francis here talking about developing questions. Davis has been working on the professional learning community structures for about 4 years now, and we're hoping that with everything we've learned today, we're going to step it up a notch, and we're going to help teachers create those essential questions which will get children engaged, questioning, wondering, and making connections with their learning.
Thank you. Thank you for having me this morning. Thank you guys for being here, and thank you guys for showing up. As everyone said, my name is Erik Francis, and I call myself an education specialist because I don't like to be called a consultant. Okay? Because basically I'm not here to tell you how to do something my way. I'm here to help you guys discover a way in which you can do things on your own to create good questions. I'm going to give you a number of strategies. My big belief and philosophy about professional development is this. Why is it that we're supposed to differentiate instruction, but we're not supposed to differentiate professional development? Right? We come in, here's this one way. So what I've done is basically with this is I'm going to give you multiple strategies today to help you create good questions. And I've given you guys a workbook that you can use. And if you go to the link here at tinyurl.com/GQTUSD, you'll see there's a workbook in there that you'll be using today. And when you use this workbook, not only is this going to be something that's going to help you plan your questions, but it's also something you can also project on the board when you have to go and show your questions to your students. Now, I'm going to preface this professional development by telling you today you will most likely feel something that's called cognitive dissonance. Okay? Cognitive dissonance.
Does that mean stress?
That means stress. What do you mean?
Too many things coming at once.
Too many things probably coming at once? Okay, what do you mean?
Oh,
What do you mean?
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
You're going to have different questions about how to ask questions that you're not familiar with, and so it'll be hard to.
So you have your devices in front of you. That's a good explanation. Thank you. Do you have your device in front of you? Would you please look up the definition of cognitive dissonance? Or you can look on your phone.
Cognitive dissonance.
Did anybody find the definition?
Mental discomfort.
Mental discomfort. What do you think that means?
Stress.
Stress?
Mental discomfort.
Too many things at once.
Simultaneously with two or more contradictory beliefs, ideas, or values.
Okay, where'd you find that?
Wikipedia.
Wikipedia. Okay. Did Wikipedia cite that?
I don't know. Hold on.
Okay.
It could also mean challenge.
It goes to mean challenge. What do you mean by challenge?
That it's a little bit harder than easier, that it's something you really have to put some thought into.
Okay.
Okay, it's not too easy. You can't just solve it at first glance.
Right. Okay. Well, what do you think else with challenge? Yes.
Something that kind of, breaks with what we have established in our minds. Yeah. We kind of don't, we maybe we're thinking, or having a different path. And then all of a sudden, we kind of realize that it's not what we were thinking.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And it's not comfortable.
Right. That's a big thing. Not comfortable. Okay. Not comfortable. Thank you. Thank you. Did you find a source with the definition, or you just came up with the top of your head? Good. Good. How do you notice what I'm teaching? How do you notice how I'm teaching you guys right now? What am I doing?
Asking questions.
I'm asking questions. I'm asking you to do it. I gave you a simple statement. Today you're going to experience cognitive dissonance. What do I mean by that? And I had you guys, my students, going on your devices and looking it up. If you had a cell phone, my friend here, she had a cell phone, she looked it up. Okay? Do your kids have one-to-ones or?
They when yeah,
We have a
when
lot
we
of
have
cows,
the cows, the computers on wheels.
Okay.
We have every kid with a laptop.
Yes.
Okay, what if I said this is the way the modern learner learns?
Totally correct.
Would you agree? Okay, it's not like us. How many guys grew up before the internet? Show us your age here. Okay, remember that like our teachers used to tell us stuff? Okay, and we used to have to memorize stuff. And we had, what?
Phone numbers.
Right, okay. And remember how we had to come up with the answers? What if I said these days, answers come free? What do I mean by that? Answers come free.
And you can look it up quickly.
You can look it up quickly.
anything.
Okay? Any math problem we give these kids, they can do on a computer or a calculator. How many of you had a math teacher who said to you, you need to learn the math this way because you're not going to be walking around with calculators in your pockets for the rest of your life? Okay? Now, we basically, those of us who grew up before the internet, before the information age, before the age of automation, we looked as calculators as fast or cheating, right? But then again, if you think about it, all the cooperative learning and grouping strategies, we also looked at that way. We called it cheating too. You were supposed to do that as well. Okay? So the great thing about this, and the great thing about this as teachers, is that we now can really engage the kids to think deeply. We can even ask the kids to go out and get the information for us instead of us going and presenting it all the time. And also, we can challenge and engage our kids to express and share their learning in their own unique way. What if I even told you that with using questions, you can even have kids choose their grades? Okay? Now you're going to feel cognitive dissonance because I'm going to challenge your thinking. I am going to basically go and challenge your thought process because teaching has to change. Okay? Huh? Okay, this is going to be fun because you know what? What it does is this. Everything is based on the standards. Whether you like them or you don't, it's all based upon the standards. I also want you to realize your curriculum is a tool. Your textbook is a tool and a resource. Okay? You are an artist. You are an architect. You are a designer. Your creativity comes from the question you ask. Now, my learning about questioning is this. When I first started doing this PD, I would come in with teachers and go, okay, guys, let's create questions. And everybody's sitting there go, okay. So every time I do this, it's a new experience for me because I'm always learning different ways to how to develop questions. You're going to feel uncomfortable about this initially. I'm going to tell you straight right now. But what if I told you once you get the hang of this, you'll be working smarter teaching and the kids will be working harder learning? What if I told you that I got my teaching down to a 1-to-4 ratio? 1 day direct instruction, guided practice, 4 days independent practice. What if I told you that my kids actually chose the items that would serve as their test? What if I told you, and I'm going to show you how I do this, I could teach math with one problem for 2 weeks? Okay? Because it's about deeper. What we're going to try to do is we're going to try to give our kids an experience. Not an activity, not a bunch of items, not a bunch of texts or tasks to read. We're going to give them an experience. You want to look at your class to say this: how can that child leave my class today and still talk about it 20 to 30 years later when they're on my Facebook and we get together for dinner and say, you know what I remember about your class? I remember when you taught Lord of the Flies and you asked the question, is man born savage or civilized? That's what my students just did. I want you want your kids to remember, not just to remember, but have that experience takeaway. Because what if I said kids don't remember facts? and kids don't remember information, and kids don't remember procedures. They remember the experience. So when they look at your assessments, they're going to go, oh, that's like when I did that in Mr. Francis's class. But what if I told you teaching becomes simpler for us and even easier because this, what if we gave the kids all the answers and asked them why? Okay? I'm going to show you guys that. So my first part of this training is going to be modeling teaching and learning. And I apologize, it's going to be a lot of top down, it's going to be a lot of talking, but then I'm going to try to get you guys into creating your own questions. Okay? You have a workbook there. We're going to pick out different pages of the workbook, and I'm going to show you this. The first thing I'm going to show you is how you can take standards and statements, I call it instruction, information, and turn it into inquiry. The second thing we're going to go through is this. We're going to post the standard on the board. How many guys got to post the standard on the board? How many guys teach vocabulary? How many guys give the kids a bunch of words and say, this is what you need to know and understand, and that's what they need to define and explain? What if I said we can do this and create student-centered vocabulary? What if I said we can post the standard simply on the board and say to the kids, okay, what are the words, terms, and details you don't know and understand? How would you phrase it to me as a question? And since you have smart boards like this, I believe you have these in your classrooms?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay? Because I had done this all the way back when I did a chalkboard. You're going to have a graphic up there where you actually can write down the questions and the kids will create the vocabulary and the base level questions for the class. Then I'm going to teach you how you turn standards into questions that will not only set the instructional focus, but also serve as a summative assessment. See, with me, I would ask one question. That would be set my instructional focus for the whole unit and serve as an essential question for my assessment. Now, I'd ask other questions that extend learning. But then I'd also do something where I go beyond the standards and personalize it. And I'm going to teach you guys that when you take the standard, all you got to do is put 3 words in front of it and you personalize any kind of standard and turn it into a personal question. Actually, it's called a driving question. You know what those 3 words are? How could you? You guys excited?
Yes.
Does anyone have any questions for me? Would you guys like to see my students? Would you like to see pictures of kids I teach? Okay. These are my kids. This is who I think about when I create my questions. These are the kids who basically, when I create my lessons and my questions, this is who I'm thinking about. Why are you guys looking at my kids really weird?
Because of Oprah?
Wait. I taught who? Who did I teach?
Oprah?
I taught Oprah? Who else? You said who else? J-Lo? I taught Hillary? Who else?
The Rock?
I taught The Rock?
There's Obama.
I taught President Obama. I had a multi-age class.
Michael Jordan, I think?
Possibly Michael Jordan? Who do you see?
What's his name? The one that bites ears?
Oh, Mike Tyson?
Yeah.
Oh, that's Mike Tyson, yes.
Okay.
Madonna.
I taught Madonna? Okay, would you like to know what I see up here? 80% of these kids came from single-family households. 60 to 70% of these kids would qualify for free and reduced lunch. 50 to 60% of these kids are below grade level. 30% of these kids would have qualified for special ed services. 15% got them. 5% got quality services. You see this little boy right here?
No. Oh,
Right here?
yeah.
He's an English language learner. English is not his native language. And he's considered to be the most brilliant of them all. Now, I can also tell you that these guys here, they spend more time in the principal's office than on the principal's list. Even Obama.
Yes, you got to see it all the time.
Okay? See, I call these kids zaggers. Because the kids who zag, they don't function like this. These are the kids we used to love. We still love them a little bit. Do this, point A, point B, they go, they do what I want, right? Zaggers are more like that. Okay? Zaggers are more like that. Because everybody, when you zig, you go straight to that point. Teach, learn, do, done. Zaggers, they're going off this way.
We have a
Okay?
lot of parents of saggers here.
Yeah, and that's good. Because I'm a zagger.
Yes,
Okay?
that's good.
And the world embraces zaggers. Because zaggers, if you say, do this, what are the zaggers going to say to you? Why? Because that's what they want to know. Why? Here's my question to you. What if we asked why before a zagger can ask us? What if we asked the question? What if we just started our lessons with asking a question instead of saying, this is it? Because then they're going to know like this. They're not going to say why. You know what they're going to say? I don't know. And then I say, I don't expect you to. I just started the lesson. But if you don't know by the end of the week, then I'm in trouble. Okay? So that's the whole thing. So if you notice, all the kids there, they were all zaggers. Now, I also believe in this. This is actually a gifted model for gifted students. And I believe we're all born with gifts. And I call them strengths and super strengths. Okay? Some of us have a strength in something, and some of us have a super strength in something. And what we need to do is that we need to turn those strengths into super strengths into a talent. And a talent is that workable skill. I call that college and career ready. Now that's what the campaign slogan is for college and career readiness. The true thing is actually called post-secondary readiness. And actually when we talk about college and career readiness, it's by a guy named David T. Conley. We're only talking about half the pie. Because college ready means this: you are prepared to go to a university or a college and not have to take a remedial course your freshman year. Well, there's a large percentage of students who can do that. A career ready says you have the skills and knowledge to start a career. Well, how many of you have had multiple careers already in your career? This is my third right now. Okay? The other half is what's called job ready. That's a quarter of the pie. Job ready is, do you have the basic and specific skills to start a profession? That means, can you comprehend and can you communicate? But the most important one I think up there they don't talk about is a thing called work ready. You know what work ready is? Self-reliance and independence. This is your principal. Your principal says to you, you guys need to raise your test scores. Right?
Again,
What if you do this? What if you do what your kids do and you go like this to your principal?
Why?
I don't get it. You ever have kids do that? I don't get it.
I do that.
You know what she can say to you? Then you're fired. And I used to do that to kids actually. When kids say that to me, when they go like this to me, Mr. Francis, I don't get it. I go like this, okay, well then you're fired. The second graders cry.
It's fine.
But the 4th and 5th grade up, they start going like this to me. You can't fire me, this is school. I go, that's right, isn't that great? You're in school with a teacher. But in the real world, you're gonna have a boss. And that boss expects you to do it. Why? Because you convinced him in that job interview, or convinced her in that job interview, you can do anything. And if you go up to that boss and go, I don't get it, they're not gonna teach you, they're just gonna say, do this, that's the answer, do this. I don't get it, then they're gonna go, then you're fired. Because there's 10 other people who want your job. 2 who really can do it or do it better than you, and 8 who will figure it out. That's when you teach our kids perseverance. It's also a social emotional thing, because I like to ask my kids this. Now let me ask you this and tell me honestly. Is it that you don't get it, or you just really don't want to do it? And then when they go like this, I don't want to do it. I'll go like this, well then you're really fired. Okay? And if they don't get it, I go up to them like this. I said, what don't you get? It. What part of it? The whole thing. Okay, so what's that right there? The question is this: 3x equals 9. What's that right there? 3. What's 3? A number. How much is 3? 1, 2, 3. Bless you. So obviously you get part of it. Okay, what's x? A letter. What's a x in math? I don't know. Right. Is there a plus sign between a 3 and the x? No. Is there a minus sign? No. Is there a division sign? No. What's the only sign left? Multiplication. Is that what it is? Yeah. So what's 3 times x to give you 9? I don't know. Right. See, your question is not this. You say, how do I get x alone to find out what its value is? Now, remember I taught you, what's the number in front of x in math? What do I call it? And my kids would say, oh, it's the invisible 1. Why? Because it's invisible and it's a 1. So what do I have to do to turn 3 into 1. Well, I have to divide 3 into 3 and get 1. Good, but then I also have to divide something else into 3, right? What? 9, right? Yeah. So what's 9 divided by 3? 3. Okay, good. Now I got the invisible 1. I got my answer. What's x equal? 3. Oh! What did I teach them? Absolutely nothing. What did they learn? A ton of information. And that's the experience we want to give it. Okay? So the thing is this. When we talk about this, we often think about teaching being very directive, being very top-down. Do this. But our zaggers, and most of our kids are zaggers because they're always asking why, we need to ask them a good question. Because once we ask them a good question, that will get them going to their talent level. We need to challenge our kids. We need to challenge their thinking. We need to challenge them not only academically, we also need to challenge them socio-emotionally. We need to let our kids know that they can do anything. Our kindergarten, where's my kindergarten teachers? Those kids come into school with tons of questions. Okay?
And they cannot formulate questions.
Right.
Because ask me something and then they start telling a story.
Because their brains are so fired up and they don't know how to do it because they're going like, right? Okay? So what happens is this, a kindergarten comes into school wondering if a man could fly and a car could fly. And then for the next 12 years, we teach them why it can't. Okay? That's the thing. These kids come to school with it. And our kids, they ask questions between the age of 2 and 5. How many guys have been with a child between the age of 2 and 5? What do they always ask? Why? Why? When they get to school, they stop questioning so much because now it's not one child asking their mother who gets all the questions. It's now one teacher with 30 other people's kids, all kids going like this, why? So then the teacher takes control of the question. Now K through 2, they're still asking questions, but around 1st grade, when they start taking risks and respond to questions, they get this look. The first time they see this look, where's my 1st grade teachers? Okay? They see this look for the first time in their life when they ask or respond to a question. And the kids learn, oh, I don't want to ask that question. Now K through 2, that's still really good questioning because when a kid asks a question and you leave it open, because this was me as a kid, in K through 2, my teacher would say to me, does anyone have any questions? I would go, oh, yes! Do you think Bubble's a good name for a hamster? You open it up. Now K through 2 teachers, I'm very satirical, so laugh at this. I try to change behavior and recognize it like that. K through 2 teachers go like this, that's a great cool question, Eric. Let's all go to the questioning corner. It's time to go to the questioning corner, because Eric's got one. All right, everyone take out your thinking carpets. You take out your thinking carpets and you sit down. You go, Eric's got a great question. Do you think Bubble's a good name for a hamster? Think, pair, share, and discuss. Okay, where's 3rd grade? Okay, 3rd grade, you don't have that much time for questions. Okay, because you got to teach about fractions. And you just taught fractions. And you have me in the class, and you said, does anyone have any good questions? And I'll say this, do you think Bubble's a good name for a hamster? And a 3rd grade teacher will do something like this. Honey, that's a great question. Can we get to it later? And we never do. Or, what does this have to do with the lesson? I've seen 3rd grade teachers go like this. They go like this. T-O-T, and the whole class goes, time on task, and looks at the kid who did that and said, N-T-O-T, not time on task.
Did you write that one down?
Yeah. I've seen 3rd grade teachers do this. This is scary. They go like this. Look. Test is coming in April. It's October. According to the curriculum app we spent 2 weeks on before you got here, we're going to be done with fractions by November 1st. And I got a great Hagen cooperative learning strategy we're going to do with fractions and your candy on Halloween. So we don't have time to talk about Bubbles the hamster. We need to get through fractions by November 1st, and we will learn it. Yes, we will. Okay? Kids should always be writing. They're always going to have to be writing. I'm going to show you guys that with this. So let me take you through this. This is basically going to be how you're going to do teaching and learning with good questions. There's a lot of stuff up here, but we're going to turn this into answers, and then you can break it down simply. You are actually teaching. What if I said you're actually teaching kids 4 things? Familiarity, understanding, awareness, and expertise. You're helping them build background knowledge so they can demonstrate and communicate how they can use what they've learned, think deeply, and express and share how can they examine and explain answers, argument, conclusions, ideas, and then figuring out what else can I do with it. These questions here will guide your teaching.
Are you going to give us some of this?
Yeah, you're going to download this at the site, okay? So basically, this is your poster, because this will all be driven by questions. What if I said the only time you're going to give directions now is when you have to basically take a pencil, take out a pen, everybody sit down quietly. Your directions will be more behavioral than academic. So let's start. What's a good question? Talk amongst yourselves right now. Have a discussion. What's a good question? Because that's what I'm here to teach you today. So what's a good question? Talk amongst yourselves. Good, good. Okay, guys, we're back in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Could I run this whole PD on that question right there? Could I just stop the PD right here and we just look at this today and just say what's a good question, and all of us have a dialogue and just have this slide right here and then basically focus on addressing that? Could I do that?
Yes.
That's the power of a good question. Okay? Now, here's the interesting thing. I walked around to some of you. Did you notice that? When I teach, I just throw the question out there. And I let the kids talk amongst themselves. And I let it percolate with them. And I may ask some more questions, right? Didn't I ask you guys some more questions? Questions are not meant to be answered like boom. Okay? That's not a good question. Good questions are addressed and responded to. What is the difference, and what do I mean by that? Good questions are not answered, they're addressed and responded to. What do I mean by that? There's only 3 ways you can answer a question in this class. Correctly, incorrectly, and those you can defend, explain, justify, and support. Or a few. So what do you think I mean by that? Good questions are not answered, they are addressed and responded to.
In other words, a good question is not the one that gives you the good answer, but the one that gives you a good way.
A good way to think, okay?
Or opening to other ideas.
Opening to
like
other ideas. Okay. Now, does that mean I got to walk into class and all the time make this real profound, elaborate question?
No.
That really? No, because I can just go like this. Who was the first president of the United States? Is that a good question?
No.
Why not?
No, because it's short. It's
Is it?
But if that's what you're trying to teach them.
They're retrieving information.
Is it?
it's closed. It's not gonna.
It depends on the context.
It's like a fact.
What do you mean?
Depends what you're talking about.
What am I talking about? Okay, good. So I would go like this with my class. I'd walk in, and this is actually based on a 5th grade standard. This lesson I'm going to do with you. And I'm going to walk in and we're going to go like this. Who was the first president of the United States? And the kids are all going to tell me. And then I'm going to say, how do you know?
Because I read it in a book.
How do we know the book's accurate?
We don't. I just read it because everybody says so.
Everybody says so. Okay, what else?
My class would be awesome.
How do you know George Washington was the first president of the United States?
And then you can ask why he was the first president.
You can ask why he was the first president. But remember, or what?
Or how he was, he got to that point.
How he got to that point? Okay, what if I said this? Remember I talked about those modern learners when you ask a question? Remember I said you're going to experience cognitive dissonance? What does it mean? And what'd you guys all do? Okay? I don't expect you to, okay? Remember I said you can go on your devices? When I ask a question, it is not so much only assessing prior knowledge, but it is also telling the kids, this is the information you need to give me. Okay? Now, what I'd like you to do is go on your devices and look up and ask, who's the first president of the United States? Because here's the thing, in Google, there's a metric where you can set it up where your page comes up first before anything else. The first thing on Google is not necessarily the most accurate. Because now what I'd like you to do is scroll down.
She found something.
You found something? What'd you find?
That the first acting president was John Langdon.
John Langdon or John Hanson?
John Langdon.
John Langdon. When was he
Who
president?
held the position until the first president.
Till the first president.
It's Hanson.
Is it Langdon or Hanson?
It says Langdon here.
Okay.
So what's
No,
your?
you guys are changing history on me.
There's a question here. What's
your
your
Slow down,
source?
viejo.
I don't
What's
believe
your
that.
source?
Okay. See, now here's the thing. Most of you are going to start finding about a guy named John Hanson.
The first black president.
Okay? I have to check that source after, okay? But that's the thing we have to talk about here because, ladies and gentlemen, this is how our kids learn. Where'd you find out about that? I saw it on the internet.
Hanson.
Okay?
Hanson from Maryland.
Our kids live in a world where information comes free, fast, and furiously at us. They live in a world of breaking news and they think that they know everything they need to know. Okay? Here's the interesting thing. Some of you guys saw a link that said what? You said you saw it, was it?
Says, was John Hanson the first black president or Barack Obama?
Oh, that's an interesting question with that. Okay? But here's the thing that's interesting.
Who was the first U.S.
John Hanson was the first president appointed under the Articles of Confederation. My kids would tell me that.
According to Today, I found out.
I would not even talk about it. I'd say, who's John Hanson? And they would read it off. I said, what's your source? Most of them would say, Wikipedia. Now, how do we feel about Wikipedia?
Kids start small.
Wikipedia, what if I said Wikipedia is not the source, but Wikipedia is the internet librarian? Do we have a media specialist or librarian in here?
Yes.
Okay, you are probably one of the most important people on this campus. Why? Because you can still protect people from the flotsam and jetsam that's on the internet. Your job is not just to stack books and recommend for kids to read. Your job is to help kids go out and find the information. That's what makes you a librarian and a media specialist. So when you guys want someone to come down here, you have a question, you should be bringing them down to the library, and you should be having your media specialist here, or librarian, help the kids find the information they need to think critically of the sources. Wikipedia is the internet librarian. Wikipedia, you have to cite your sources. And if you can't cite it, then the information is not credible. George Washington, you find out, is the first president of the United States under Congress assembled. Sorry, first president of the United States under the U.S. Constitution, excuse me. He was the first president elected. Hanson was the first president appointed. Now, what if I told you that there were actually 8 presidents before George Washington? All appointed under the Articles of Confederation. Now, I know some of you are going like this, wait a minute. How can that be? Number one, we never heard about it in school. And number two, we always knew George Washington was to be the first president, okay? So here's how I'm going to challenge your thinking. When did the American Revolution end? 1781. When was George Washington elected?
1782.
1789.
Oh.
Who's running the country for the next those 8 years?
Also for 8 years.
Because these presidents were appointed every year under the Articles of Confederation, and that's what I'm going to teach you guys. Because according to this actually here, I'm teaching you 2 things. One is credible sources, and 2, that's my hook into the lesson.
Credible sources, that's powerful.
See, what'd you just say?
I said I want to learn this.
I want to learn this, okay? And that's awesome because that's what you want your kids to do. Because you want your kids, when you teach them, you want them to do what I call a Keanu. You know what a Keanu is? Every movie Keanu Reeves in, what does he say? Whoa. Right? Mr. Wick, you have people hunting you. Whoa. If you take the red pill, you'll stay in the Matrix and become a superhero. Whoa. Okay? I'm an FBI agent. Whoa. Right? Do you ever see Dracula? It takes place in the 1800s. And there's a scene where Dracula goes like this. You will stay at my house for 3 months. And Keanu Reeves says in a pseudo-British accent, whoa. Okay? But your enthusiasm about this, now I got them learning, because then I got to teach this thing. 1 second. Well, the animations went backwards. I got to teach this thing. Whoops. I gotta teach this. This is my standard. By the end of this unit, students will understand how the failure of the Articles of Confederation led to the writing of the United States Constitution, and that students will investigate the successes and failures of the Articles of Confederation, determine why many felt a new plan of government was needed, and explain how the Articles of Constitution attempted to address the weakness of the Articles. This is a 5th grade standard. Want to give me a Keanu? Whoa. Whoa. How am I supposed to teach this? Well, what I used to do with it is this. This was my planning. My planning was this. I took apart all the words and terms and details in that standard, and I pre-planned and said this. Okay, the kids need to know subject-specific terminology. What is an article? What is a confederation? What is a government? What is a constitution? What is a federalist? What is an anti-federalist? That's the terminology. The data and details were this. What were the Articles of Confederation? When were they ratified? Who established them? What is the U.S. Constitution? Who were the Federalists? Who were the Anti-Federalists? What was the Shays Rebellion? Now, here's what's interesting. I also presume my kids know nothing. So I look at words there they may not understand, such as, what does it mean to investigate? What does it mean to determine? What does it mean to explain? What does it mean to attempt? What does it mean to address? What is success? What is failure? What is weakness? Now this is my pre-planning. This is my lesson plan. And when my kids come into class, you know what they see? This is blank. I'm going to show you guys how I do this with math later. And then they tell me, here are the words up here, and they tell me, I say to them, what are the words, terms, and details you don't know and understand in that standard? How would you phrase it to me as a question? Now, not only does that work in terms of the kids in terms of assessing background knowledge, but it's also teaching English language learners how to create interrogative sentences and statements. Because they can't just go, article. They have to say, what is an article? I'm going to show you guys how I used to do that with math. I'm going to tell you a funny story later about my first year of teaching. When I was given a math class, I'm an English teacher, and I'm teaching everyone math the traditional way, and 20 minutes to it because the kids are all looking at me like this. I'm like, what am I teaching, a foreign language? Yes. Because finally 20 minutes, the kids went, maestro, no comprende, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. I'm going to tell you about how I did that. Okay. So now, the thing is this. This is how I grade my kids. I have my kids choose their grades. And this is my grade scale. You have this. When they have to answer one of these questions or address and respond to them, I will walk up to them and I will say, would you like to role play with me, my friend here? It's okay.
Shy.
You're not shy. What's your name?
Leticia.
Hi, Leticia. Leticia or Leticia?
Leticia.
Okay, Leticia. Okay, I'm Eric. Nice to meet you. Okay, I want you to be so confident with that question to what is the Articles of Confederation, you got the correct answer. And all you did was just copy it out of the book. Okay? So I'm going to walk up to you, Leticia, and go like this. Leticia, how are you?
Oh, great.
Is that your answer?
Yes.
Is that your final answer?
Yes.
Is that your A answer?
Yes.
Okay. Who gives the A? You give yourself an A?
Because I know that I have it correct.
Oh, you know what correct means? C. Because you know why? Correct means you're just correct, and I can get a correct answer from a computer.
Oh, I love it.
Would you like an A?
Yes.
Why don't you go a little bit further about what they were, how they were organized, and what they did? It's up to you, because right now, congratulations, you got a C. You passed.
Lisa passed.
Okay? Well, you know what? If that's your choice, that's what you want, that's fine. If you want the A, this is what I expect from
And I
you.
have to write it in my own words.
And your own words. Oh, that's good. So you know my class. You know my routines. All right, fist bump. All right? See, what happens is this with my kids. I tell them this. Hey, I don't want correct answers. I can get them off a computer. I want you to tell me what you know and understand. Okay? Because I can get all correct answers from a computer. I want them to explain it to me. But you notice I also gave her a what? I gave her a kudo, but I also gave her a what? She said, it's correct, I'm fine. And I said what?
You challenged us.
I said, if that's what you want, that's fine. Because how many of you guys have that parent who comes in and goes like this? In my class, it was interesting because the parent would come in and go like this. why is my child only getting a C? And I said, I don't know. I told them they had the correct answer. I even told them, if you want an A, do this. They chose not to. So every time I had that parent, the parent would go like this: why is my kid getting a C in your class too? Why are you getting a C in this class? If you failed my class, you chose to fail. If you got a D in my class, you chose the D. If you failed my class, you got a C in my class, you chose the C. Because my grade scale was like this. If you got an A, awesome, awe-inspiring, above and beyond expectations, I could not ask for more. But a B, I'd go like this: better than expected, beyond expectations, but you know what? I bet you could do a little bit better. You want to try? A C stood for choose. Choose to accept your grade, or choose to find and fix your mistakes, or choose to go further. A D stood for don't. Don't worry, don't give up, do it again, or don't. An F was this: did you forget it? Did you forgo it? Okay, because that was my first thing. You got an F. My first day of class, you say to my kids, okay guys, here's how you fail my class. Do nothing. Don't try, don't make the attempt, don't turn anything in, don't do anything, guarantee you will fail my class. I've had kids at the end of the year. How many guys had kids at the end of the year? They basically have not done anything. They come up to you and go like this: so what can I do for extra credit? I say you can't. But what you can do is, in your own words, summarize every unit that you did not do something in your own words, turn it into me before the end of the school year, and I'll give you a 59.5. You go, 59.5? All that work? Why? And I said, because it's better than a 0. Because what happens is this, and this is what happens with the older kids, because the older kids, do you guys do final exams? Or final benchmarks?
We do benchmarks.
Okay, so in the older kids with the final exams, you know what happens is that kid who chooses to do it, now they have a study packet. And I believe learning is through the synthesis of writing. It's how you take your language, take what's on the text, read it, verbalize it, write it down. And because they did it, they basically have that remembered in their mind as the experience, and when they get to the final, they get a 59.5, guarantee all the time, they get a 90 or an 80 and they pass my class. Now some people may say, well, you let them get away with not doing the work. And I said, no, I let them get away with an education. Okay? We all make mistakes. We all have errors in judgment. And what kids will hopefully realize is, man, I don't want to do that again. Okay? Any thoughts about this? Because you have this in that Dropbox to use as a grade scoring guide. Now what's interesting about it is this: if a student, how many guys spend your weekends grading? How many guys spend your weekends bleeding your papers red or purple, putting copious notes on your papers when you grade, and the kids go like this when they get it? Let's say this is a sheet and it's a couple of pages, they go like this. Cool, I passed. Did you even read the notes I wrote? No. And then I was used to be, remember that old commercial with the Native American who used to cry when he used to see the trash in the park? That was me. Because at the end of the day, I spent all weekend grading those papers. I'd see the kids, all their papers are thrown out in the garbage. And I'm like, are you serious? So all of a sudden I decided, okay, fine, I'm going to do this as a scoring guide. You all start with a 5, which means I'm presuming you know it, you can do it correctly, and based upon the quality of your response, you either go up or you go down. And my kids would come up to me and say, why'd I get a 6? And I'd say, okay, here's the deal. I'll stay after school, or I'll beat you in my lunch hour. Let's go over it. So if it was math, they'd show me the problem, and I'd say, okay, that's the answer you got? Yeah. Okay, so where did you go wrong? Okay, now here's a post-it. Show me how you did that wrong. Show me how you can do it correctly, excuse me. English language arts, what are you saying here? Oh, I guess I'm not writing it clearly. Okay, here's a post-it. Write it down clearly. Okay, because you came and saw me, you got it. You got a 6, I'll give you a 6.5. Tonight if you go home, you do it over, do it nicely, present to me in a nice format, I'll give you a 7. It's up to you. Okay? That's how I always encourage the kids. That's that social emotional aspect of it. Is that basically choose your grade. Yes? Yeah, go ahead.
So, how critical are grades as a number, as an indicator to have learned when we're discussing, we're talking about questions and how they're asked and how they promote critical thinking and deep understanding. So where is the balance between that? Because we're talking about the end of the year and our students are getting a grade, and we may be concerned because they were not responsible in whatever turning in good projects. But if it's here where we're targeting, not necessarily what they're producing, they are important. We want to make our students accountable for producing work, right? Demonstrating their knowledge. So if we're learning about, if we're improving our skill as educators in crafting better questions, we should have a really good sense of our learning of our students throughout the year, right?
Right.
So where do you strike that balance with the grade and what?
Well, the balance is about the quality of the response. Okay, if they don't turn it in based upon the deadline, because I'm teaching two different things here. I'm teaching academics and I'm teaching responsibility, right? Social emotional behavioral. Now, some people might say, well, you're penalizing a student for turning in the grade late. That's not really measuring their learning. It is, but it's not, it is because what you're doing is this. There's another learning aspect for it. And every time I said to the kids when they would do that, because here's what happens. I don't do homework, I do long-term deadlines. And the kids decide whether they want to do it the night before or not. Now, if they don't turn it in by the deadline, and they give me some sort of reason, like, I'm really sorry, my parents had this, or something's going on in my life right now, of course I'm going to be flexible. But if they don't turn it in by that deadline, they go like this. I said, why did you turn it in? Oh, no. Okay? I go like this to the kids. Okay, you get 59.5 if you turn it in 2 weeks. You lost that opportunity to get an A, which I know you would have. But now the penalty is you get a 59.5. And when I try to teach my kids this, because kids don't understand this, you get 1 0, okay. You get 2 zeros, 3 zeros, you're behind it. You get too many zeros, you can't really get back. That's why I always try to give them that opportunity. And what I also try to do is try to encourage them and try to keep all my work within class where I can control it. I try not to send them home with homework. Does that answer your question, kind of?
Kind of.
Kind of.
Yeah, again, in my mind, I'm trying to balance it. I know that a student has certain behaviors, but I also know he's learning. And so again, as an educator, where do we strike that balance so we're not punitive? Sometimes we tend to be punitive with grades rather than assessing, how am I teaching this child? And the quality of my instruction, I think, it has to come back to me as well.
Oh, I agree with that. And the thing is this, I don't grade everything. But my kids don't know that, because my kids go like this. Is this for a grade? I go, I don't know, treat it like it is. I'll decide based upon you guys.
And while elementary philosophy differs a little bit from middle school and high school, we're still, even from kindergarten, we're still preparing them for that middle school and high school, which move even slower than elementary changes in teaching. So, when you say the kid knows it here, well, he's got to be able to show it. He's got to be able to demonstrate it. And I think a good teacher would allow him to demonstrate it in many ways. You still have to be able to demonstrate it.
You know that's the hardest thing about bringing from the kids here to here to here? You know who has the hardest time doing that? Gifted kids.
Yes.
Gifted kids can look at a math problem and go like this. I know it. Well, what is it? It's 4. How'd you get that? Doesn't matter, is it correct? Okay? That's gifted kids. Okay? Special needs kids go to higher order thinking faster than any other. Why? Because they want to apply it, they want to know why it works, they want to know what else, what if I did this or that, that's evaluate, and what else can I do with it? That's create. See what I mean? The other thing is this, don't give them a reason not to want to do the work. See all these questions? They're not mine, it's theirs. Okay, it's theirs. I basically, when I do student-centered vocabulary, what I'm doing with them is that I'm telling them, hey, you're going to create the lesson with me. And then I try to make interesting questions. The problem is I'm given stuff like this. So what I do with this, I have to rephrase these into questions. So you're going to have a grid like this with me today in which you're going to see how can I turn standards into interesting questions. Okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is this. Sometimes when I look at a standard, I see the question stem embedded. Do you see the question stem embedded in this first standard here? What is it?
How the weakness
Right. So the first thing I'm going to put down is, oh, there's the question stem. How? Then I look at, what am I teaching? What am I teaching here? Specifically what? The weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation, what they do. The verb is lead to the what context? The condition. The writing of the U.S. State's Constitution. When I talk about history, using a helping linking verb, is it do or did? Did. So look how I've created that question there. You see that? Okay, what I want you to do now is I want you to tell me what are the two question stems you see in this huge long standard. Talk amongst yourselves. What are the two question stems, the two question words you see in that long standard? Talk amongst yourselves.
Two questions.
Hard part about putting a presentation on there. That's okay. Do you see the two question stems? What are two question stems? What are two question words you see there? Well, is that a question word or is that a Bloom's verb? Okay, I see why and I see what else. So I know my two questions are that. They're going to start with that. So why what? Why many? Why did many feel a new plan of government was needed? How did the United States Constitution attempt to address the weaknesses? But I also have this up here, the successes and failures of the Articles of Confederation. Well, there were successful and failures of the Articles of Confederation. You're going to go look up, what were they? Now watch this. Look how many questions I just created for this unit based upon that standard. What if I said this is authentic standards-based grading? Why? Because you're assessing to that standard. Any item you give our kids who are multiple choice, it's a baseball pitch. Because they're either going to hit it or they're going to miss it. Now what if it was a bad pitch? What if it was a bad day? Okay? On our assessments, you get 50 questions on our assessments. 5 may address one standard. And it's either acceptably aligned, appropriately aligned, or insufficiently aligned. Sorry, fully aligned, acceptably aligned, insufficiently aligned. Also, you got multiple objectives here. They're going to have to investigate the success and failures of the Articles of Confederation. They're going to have to determine why, and they're going to have to explain That's multiple objectives within one standard. That's true unwrapping a standard. It's a whole different training. Okay? But what you've done now is you create the questions. So what I do now is this. This becomes my instructional focus and summative assessment. When I teach the kids, I go like this. Okay, guys, here's the one question you're going to address by the end of this unit. This is going to be your test question. How did the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation lead to the writing of the U.S. Constitution? That's the one question you have to answer for me for your test. And I gave it to them on the first day. Why?
No surprises.
No surprises. Why do we surprise kids with tests? And it goes like this. Gotcha. Okay? I let them know what the test question is the first day.
Of course.
I learned that.
We want them to know what they're going to learn.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
I learned that from a guy named Ken Blanchard. Anyone heard of a guy named Ken Blanchard? He wrote The 1 Minute Manager. Great book for leaders because it tells you how to work with people. He gives his final exam, teaches up at Grand Canyon University. He gives his final exam on the first day of class. And all the professors called him in and they went like this. Dr. Blanchard, we have a concern. He said, what's your concern? Well, you're giving your final on the first day of class. And he said, what's your concern? He goes, well, if you give your final on the first day of class, then everybody will know what's on the final. And he said, isn't that the point? See, I gave my final on the second day of class. And I told the kids, well, that's the grade I guess you're going into this class with. Yeah, I taught a lot of like higher level advanced AP. I go, well, I guess it's, oh, they were crying. I had parents calling up. I said, don't worry about it. I said, if you can go and get a better grade on the first one than you can on the last one, then you know what? You earned it. Okay? I only had one kid ever challenge me on that, and he admitted to his parents he did it on purpose. So the thing is this, is that I went in there and now at least I have the kids how to understand what they want to learn. Now I know I talk about a higher level of things, and I know you guys are going to say this is K through 5. Ladies and gentlemen, your kids can think. They come to school thinking. We just got to teach them how to read, write, and do the math with their thinking. Okay, and understand the science and learn about the history. So sometimes pedagogy is our obstacle because we may say they're too young. Okay? And we're going to talk about that in a little bit, all right? Now, I have to teach every day, and they're not looking at this question every day. So I come up with some questions, and that standard, the substandard in it, or the secondary standard, they become my questions of the day. So Tuesday I come in, I say, well, what were the successes and failures of the Articles of Confederation? If they have devices, they have to look it up. If they don't, doesn't mean technology stops working. Somehow, those of us who grew up without the internet, we still got to be intelligent. Okay? I bring in articles that they can read. Okay? Wednesday, why did many feel a new government was needed? And they have to phrase it in their own words. Because it's deeper knowledge. What is the reason the first 8 presidents of the United States under Congress assembled are not acknowledged as presidents? And they are going out, now they went from researching to investigating. Now I get creative with them. And that's my hypothetical. Oh, I'm sorry, before I do that, I can also do this for grouping. You know, we say, I have a lot of stuff to teach. No, they have a lot of stuff to learn. Why don't we turn it over to the kids and let them teach all of us? So count off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Group 1, that's your question you're going to teach the class. Group 2, that's your question you're going to teach the class. Group 3, you're going to teach that. Group 4, you're going to teach that. Group 5, you're going to teach that. Group 6, you're going to teach that. So I have my choice. Now I'm getting creative. And that's when my kids come in and see this. What if the nation was still governed by the Articles of Confederation? Could they be reinstated? Now our kids will understand this because they understand the way this works. What if we woke up to this morning? That's not real. I made it. I looked up the font for Twitter. Because it's funny because now everyone's going like this. Whoa, did he really say that? Okay. But could he do that? Could, huh? We don't know. See, that's the whole thing. But that's where I'm having them kids think critically and creatively. Okay? Now, this next question is this. Should George Washington continue to be recognized as the first president of the United States, or should these 8 presidents be acknowledged? What's the correct answer? What's the right answer? This is basically what historians are discussing. I'm having my kids think like a historian. Okay? You know where I got this lesson from? From this question. Should Pluto not be classified as a planet, still be categorized as a planet, or should the designation of all planets within our solar system be reconsidered or redefined? And I even go further with, I go like this. Should Pluto not be considered a planet because of the popular vote of the International Astronomers Union of 2007? Should it be considered a planet because of what they said the Harvard-Smithsonian debate? Or should we just reconsider what we're doing as a planet since we keep on discovering planets more and more beyond our solar system? Okay? Now, how much did you just learn from that one question? Because you got to go, well, what was that vote? Well, what was that debate? Well, what do you mean all these different planets? And I'm delving deeper. Then I get into the feeling question. I call that the affective. These are the questions that ask about you. And I ask this. Would you consider yourself a Federalist, Anti-Federalist, or somewhere in between, and why? And then I ask them this. What are some current events and issues that continue the arguments of the Federalists and Anti-Federalists, and what do you believe would be their positions on these issues? How's that for teaching current events? Could we do one in education? What is an issue you think the Federalists and Anti-Federalists would fight about in education?
State versus local.
Right? Or federal versus state. The whole Common Core argument is an issue of Federalist versus Anti-Federalist. And I've done this with my kids. I said, was the Common Core a violation of the 10th Amendment of the Constitution? The most powerful question I ask is this. What do you want to learn about the Articles of Confederation or the first 8 presidents of the United States under Congress assembled? So talk amongst yourselves right now, and I'd like you to basically come up with a question. Talk amongst yourselves right now, okay? What I do with my kids is that after teaching a little bit, like on the 3rd or 4th day, I say, okay, guys, it's time for your question. Come up with your questions. Talk amongst yourselves right now. Okay, we're back in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now, here's the interesting thing. I give my kids about 10 to 15 minutes to discuss and come up with their questions, and we spend the whole class with them basically sharing their question. I want to show you what I do with this, okay? I want to show you what I do with this. Because this is the most important question out of all those questions I asked. What question do you have about this? Would anyone like to volunteer their question? I heard you talking about it.
So we went more like knowledge, and she took it a little higher in blooms.
Okay.
So you said, and I don't know what really they are. So that's, what are they?
What are they?
Right. So that's our entry point to that question.
Okay, so we had that. So how would you go a little bit higher?
And so what's their purpose?
Ooh, good. You know what? You're going to teach that to the class at the end of the unit.
Love it.
Okay.
You're going to teach that to the class at the end of the unit. Okay? Okay? Anyone else have a question?
Not anymore.
Not anymore? That's non-negotiable. That's non-negotiable. I used to tell my kids this, guys, look, here's the deal. I don't want to pay taxes. If I don't, I'm going to jail. And I got to be okay with that. If you don't want to do it, your jail is your 0. So you got to be okay with that. See what I mean? Because here's the thing. We need to have kids that learn how to build confidence to basically speak in front of people. And in my classroom, you honored people's differences. You honored what they knew and what they didn't know. I'm going to show you guys something I used to do with math a little bit with that. When kids would go, you don't know that? Okay? So, what is it? Remember, this is your question, not mine. And you're going to get up here and you're going to become the teacher. So what is the question you guys might have had?
Why were there 8 presidents under the United States Congress Assembly?
Why were they? Okay, good. You're going to teach that to the class. Did anyone not come up with a question? Does anyone like these questions? Which question do you like?
The purpose.
You like the purpose? Okay, you can ask them if you can ask who came up with that question. If you can, what's your name?
Martha.
Martha, what's your name?
Aide.
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 They. So like first person, third person. I, they. Okay, there you go. I, they. Okay. First person. Okay. So Martha, I, they. You can ask I, they if you can work with her. Go ahead.
Can I work with you, Aide?
Absolutely.
Nice.
You have the right to say no.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
That's not nice.
Yes, it is, because here's the deal. Some kids don't like to work in groups. Some kids don't like to work with others. Some people don't like to work with others. You ever go with your teachers and go like this, okay, I want you guys all to get together and collaboratively lesson plan. Do you always go like this? Yes, I can't wait till we work together? Or some people are like, no, I like to be on my own. How many guys were also that person in college who said this? Group work. Just give me the paper. I'll write the paper. Make sure we got the A. Okay? Right? Okay? Now what happens is this. You can take I, they's question and make it your own. Now I got perspective. And what usually happens over the course of it, because they're not going to do this at the end of the unit, you guys will come together and go, can we please work together? And then you'll come up to me holding hands going, we're going to work together. And I'm going to go like this. Cool. Because what you're learning is an important skill, is that basically I cannot do this for alone. I really need somebody's help.
Wow, you're good.
Okay? Does anyone else have a question about this?
Why do I need to learn this?
Kate.
What should I do with her? Should I send her down to the principal?
Yeah.
Really? Should I tell her why it's important to learn this?
No, you ask everybody else.
You know what I say? Is that your question?
Yeah.
Okay, here's the thing. you can address and respond to that question and present to the class. Can't say 3 things. I don't need to, and I don't want to. Because that makes Mr. Francis a disciplinarian, and you're doing on a behavior thing now. And I'm an educator. So if that's your question, I look forward to you teaching that to the class.
Oh, I like
You,
that.
stop asking.
Okay? But that's the thing, because here's the thing. I want to tell you about a student I had. He got 5 on all his AP exams. And he got 1,600 on his SATs. He failed every class from K through 12.
Wow.
You know why? He didn't do the work.
Yeah.
He was a genius. But a lot of times with our geniuses, they suffer from other things. He was also manic depressive. So when he came into my class, I didn't know whether he was going to be Bruce Banner or the Hulk. And if he had this, I knew the Hulk was here. So that one day he decided to come to school, because sometimes he'd be so depressed he couldn't get out of bed. That one day he decided to come to school, and I asked this, I'm teaching about this thing called the Puritans. Okay? Puritanism. You ready, the Puritans? He goes like this. Why do I need to learn this? And I said, that's your question? He goes, yeah. I said, okay, same rules. I don't need to, and I don't want to. You can't say that. Doesn't come to school, comes the day, he's got this smirk on his face. I go, here we go. Why do I need to learn this? I realize I don't need to learn about Puritanism. It's not because I'm not religious, because I'm not. It's because I don't believe this is religion. This is fear-mongering and blind worship. For example, when Jonathan Edwards is describing you like you're a spider dangling over the pits of hell and God can drop you in at any moment and basically there's nothing you can do with it, that's not worship, that's fear-mongering. There's not much difference between that and when people take religious works and make them do bad things. And Anne Bradstreet, she's blind worship. She writes this poem about all her stuff burning up and it's okay because it went up there with God. You need to get in reality. You got to get a job. You got to go get money. You got to go make sure you get all that stuff back. You can't just put your blind faith in something. Everybody's looking at him like this. He is so dead. I'm looking at him like this. That's great. Why? Because he did the work. What did I do? I ran down to the counselor's office and said, I want a 504 on this kid. He has to answer one question in my class. Why do I need to learn this? He agreed to it. He did it. And he would just, when he showed up to school, and it wasn't always negative. Sometimes it was, I'm glad I read this. Or, you know what, I realized this really was a waste of my time. Here's why. The kids loved it. I had kids going like this, Mr. Francis, can I get a pass to class when he speaks? I had teachers going, who's this kid all my kids want? They want to come and speak. He started coming to school. He started feeling comfortable. He started feeling confident. He got a girlfriend. Okay? No, man, this kid never came to school, never did anything. And when he graduated, finally, that sad little boy came up to me with his little Eeyore face and went like this. Thank you. Okay? It's not about him doing what I want him to do. It's about him learning. Okay?
It's just the question that I get.
Now, I gave you guys this, and this is a poster. These are all the type of questions you can ask the kids. Essential questions, there's 4 kinds. There's the universal, what is life? There's the overarching, how does science explain natural events and phenomena such as life? That's the question you would always ask, no matter what grade level. The topical is your unit, which is basically this. How do organisms grow and develop in ecosystems? The driving is the project. What kind of model can you develop and use that explains how ecosystems grow and survive in organisms? These are supplemental questions that will basically expand your knowledge and extend your thinking. And I also gave you this. Now when we come back, after the break, I feel like Ryan Seacrest there, can we do, how long is the bathroom break, 5 minutes? No?
Is that a 15-minute break?
We can do 15?
We can do 15.
We can do,
We have 2.
if we started late, we can do 10.
Okay. We can do it 10.
Start late.
We do a 10-minute break,
10-minute
and then what I want to do next, I want to show you how and why we don't typically teach with questions, and show you what resource and tool I've given you that will help you do that. Okay? Because right now this is going to be kind of a challenge for you guys, because I'm going to do something really challenging with you, because one of the things that's very, very challenging about teaching questions is to really be creative with your questions. Okay? It's like, having questions in your heart. Like I question everything. I have inquiry about everything. I watch the news, I watch TV, I read books, I read something, I hear something, and all of a sudden I want to know why, what if, okay? I question the world. But a lot of times we're not given that opportunity because we live in a world of statements and objectives. What do I mean by that? What do I mean by that?
We're robots.
Well, not we're robots, but what?
You're given information.
We're given information, okay, but we're not asked to really think critically about the information we're given. And that's what this portion of the PD is going to be about, which is basically, it's going to be about how do we take statements of objectives and factual statements and turn them into questions that have kids not only read deeply and closely, but also think beyond the text. So what I'd like you to do is, you have this in the Dropbox, the workbook, if you download it already. And what I'd like you to do is, I would like you to right now, I would like you to go to this page here. I believe it's page 23 in the workbook. In the workbook.
I don't think so.
23. I like to bounce around. I don't like to go things in order. It should say, from instruction to information to inquiry.
Or when you download? Or on Teams?
No, you just scroll down. Just scroll down.
Got it.
23.
Now, what you can do with this slide is one or two things. You can do this within the workbook, or you can copy and paste this into a new file and create a whole thing. This is a lesson planning tool. This is going to be a lesson planning tool for you. And what we're going to do here is this. We are going to do one or two things. We're going to take your standard, which is a statement of objective, and we're going to turn it into a factual statement that can serve as an enduring understanding, because the answers are in the standards. And then we're going to turn that into a question that would be our essential good question. Now I want to show you how that works. Now, what a big part of your work when it comes to teaching and learning good questions is going to be your planning. And when I plan for units, I plan for units based upon four things. My goal when I'm teaching a unit is to, number one, assess prior knowledge and build background knowledge. I'm going to show you guys how to do that in a little bit. I also have to set the instructional focus that will also serve as the assessment, and I'm going to show you how you can turn standards in that. I have to extend learning, which means that I am given the curriculum and I'm given a lot of text, but I want the kids to read deeper or think deeper, and I want to rephrase it as a question. I also want to personalize learning, and I'm going to show you guys how to do that later with standards. Hopefully we're going to have enough time, okay? Because there's a lot of stuff we got to go through here. But what I want to go through first is how can we extend learning based upon the evidence that's in our texts, the examples in our curriculum, and also the explanation from sources. So what happens is this. We are unfortunately in teaching, you all teach reading and language arts, right? Because you're K through 5. You're given stuff like this. This is a 5th grade standards. You have to determine a theme of a story, drama, or poem from the details of the text, including how characters in a story or drama respond to challenges, or how the speaker in a poem reflects upon a topic, and you have to summarize the text. So how many objectives do I have in that standard? 2. Because I have to determine a theme of a story or drama, poem, and the text. This is what I specifically have to do. And then I also have to summarize it. So when I want to turn that into a question that will set the instructional focus, I'm going to have you guys do this later. We'll use a grid. But the reason why we have our standards is because of this thing like this. They're phrased like that. What's this here? Bloom's taxonomy. What if I told you, how many guys use Bloom's taxonomy to create your questions? What if I told you Benjamin Bloom said don't? Benjamin Bloom said, my taxonomy is for creating educational objectives, not questions. Questions come from the teacher. Interesting, huh? And Anderson and Krathwohl, and this is their revised version, they said, don't use this to create questions, create educational objectives. Because that's not a question. That says, do it. That's A, B. That kid is going to, who's the zagger in your class, he's asking, why? In fact, that's not the appropriate graphic for Bloom's. That's what Bloom should look like.
Like Nike.
Okay? Just do it. And the only reason why it's not that is because Nike will sue you if you use their swoosh for anything except for sneakers. Okay? And this basically, when you teach this way, you sound like this. Do it! Just do it! Okay? Where's our student teacher? She would have known that thing.
I know. Oh, no, I know that one.
Yeah. Okay?
Enough.
But that's what it makes you sound like. So in my book, what I did was I changed Bloom's. I don't use verbs. I use question stems. So whenever I see a verb of Bloom's, I relate it to the question stem. I also change Bloom's to, if you notice, I don't say remember anymore. I say what there? Recognize. That's active learning.
This is wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, I haven't even shown you yet what I'm going to do, or you see it on
I
there.
don't know, but I this graph.
Okay?
But it's wonderful.
Now, I also brought back synthesize. Synthesis in old Bloom's was where we did create. Synthesize is actually how you process personally information and knowledge. And create is the expression. Okay? So instead of the verbs, what I did was I changed them all to question stems. So if you ask, tell the kids recognize or those verbs, you're asking who, what, where, and when. If you're doing understand, you're asking how and why. And how and why can take you all the way up to evaluate. If you're asking them to apply, you're asking them, how does it work? How is it used? If you ask them to analyze, that's why it's saying why. What does it infer or suggest? You start to get hypothetical. What could happen? How could? You look at cause and effects and relationships. Evaluate, again, now you're looking at effects more than causes. But synthesize is when you start to introduce you. And that's when you get the kids thinking. If you ask you, you're not asking them, how's it done? You're asking, how do you do it? Where's my K through 3 teachers in here? You guys are doing an awesome job teaching the kids how to add, how to subtract, how to multiply, and how to divide. You even ask them, how do you do it? But they really need to also understand the conceptual understanding of what is addition, what is subtraction, what is multiplication, what is division. Because by the time they get to 6th grade and they start working with integers or ratios, they have no idea what they're supposed to subtract or add when they get -5 plus 3. The kid should also be explaining the concept. It's not, watch, it's this, watch. What is 2 plus 2, class? Why? Exactly. Exactly. If I know, and this is the way I answered the question when I was a kid. My teachers come to me in 3rd grade, go like this, Eric, what's 2 times 2? I said 2 plus 2. What's 3 times 3? 3 plus 3 plus 3. What's 4 times 4? 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4. Eric, what's 5 times 4? It's 5 added to itself 4 times, or 4 added to itself 5 times. Eric, what are you telling me? I'm telling you what it is. It's a multiplication problem. It's repeated addition. The first number tells me how much I have. The second is how many times I got to add that first value to itself. So I could do 542 times 398. I can tell you what it is. It's a multiplication problem. And it's 542 added to itself 398 times, or 398 added to itself 542 times. You may say to me, oh, I want the answer. Oh, okay, hold on one second. Okay? Because this is the way the world works. All right? How many of you actually still do the math with a pencil and paper? Okay? Most people do it like this. It's faster, and you know it's going to be it. But that's not what math's about. Math's about why is it 215,716. And I'm going to show you guys that in a bit. How we teach kids with this. Okay? So with this, now you're going to change your you're going to change your standards into a question. So when I'm presented with something like this, later what we're going to do is this. We're going to take out this grid, and we're going to do kind of the same thing we did with the social studies before. So do you guys see in there question stems? How? So the question stems for how will allow you to be there. But what I also have to do is I have to look for the Bloom's verbs. Okay? What's the first Bloom's verb you see?
Determine.
Determine. What's another Bloom's verb you see?
Reflect.
Huh?
Respond.
Well, is a person reflecting, or what about this there? Summarize. You're looking for the cognitive action verbs. So I'm going to put that right there. Now, what am I determining? That is my topic I'm teaching. Okay? In this one, summarize, what am I summarizing?
The story, the drama, or poem.
The text. So I'm creating this. Okay? Now, the specific stipulations there is that they have to determine a theme of a story, drama, or poem from what?
Details.
From details in the text. This next one, there isn't a specific criteria. But I can, since I have determine, which is basically, can be understand, can be analyze, right? I put in the question stems how, and summarize is also understand. I put in could to make it hypothetical, or can to make it analytical, and look what I have from that standard.
You can also put reflect.
Oh, I know, but wait 1 sec, I'm not done yet. Because you saw question stems there, right? Okay, so you can basically go, the question stems, now I got two other separate questions. I have the verbs and the stuff I'm teaching. There's my verbs. See? And then I have a stipulation there, context there, a context there, that's a specific. And I put in my looking or helping verb. Look at the questions I just created from this standard. You guys were going to do that, huh?
You're tearing it apart completely.
Right. Now here's what's interesting. You know what these are in English language arts? Whoops, sorry. Final exam questions. Or final unit questions. How could a theme of a story, drama, or poem be determined from details in the text? Choose 3 stories you read in this unit and answer that question. Or choose a story you read in that question. Or I could just go like this. How could the theme of green eggs and ham be determined from details in the text? Now some of you might say, you want me to use that kind of language with kindergarten kids? I say, yes. Here's why. When we sometimes do kid-friendly objectives, we take away the important vocabulary development they need. And they will see these words all the time. And the kids, the younger they are, the more they're like sponges. When they hear a word once, they'll hear it what? Every time. Little funny story. My daughter comes home 2nd grade. She says, Daddy, I got problem solving. And I said, okay, what's the problem? She goes, I sold 19 flowers in April, 15 flowers in May. How many more did I sell in April than I did in May? I said, that's not a problem. You sold more. Your problem's June. She goes, Daddy, that's not in my problem. I said, no, that's Daddy's problem. Your problem's June. You got to tell me how much you need to sell by the end of June to meet your quota this quarter. She goes, what? I said, your quota. She goes, what's a quota? I said, you know what a quota is. She goes, no, I don't. I said, you've heard that word. And she goes, no, I've never heard that word before. I said, you've never heard that word before? She goes, no. I said, I bet you an action figure you heard that word. And she goes, fine. I want Wonder Woman. The Barbie. I go, okay, go in the living room, go put on Monsters, Inc.
Yes.
And I played Monsters, Inc. in the beginning. And I said, that's the total. What happens when it goes up? What are you doing? Adding. And when it goes down, what happens? Subtracting. I go, okay. She watches it. She watches it. They have the scene. The Henry J. Watermoose, the boss, the crab monster goes, well, how are we doing today? And the other monster says, we aim actually make our quota today, sir. My daughter goes like this. And she said, you put that in there. I said, I didn't. It's always been there. And that's what makes the kids pay attention, because they watch and they listen passively. We have to do it actively. Now, when she came back to school the next day to her second grade teacher's class, she goes, okay, I gave you guys a problem last night. And she goes, Ms. Guarino, that wasn't a problem. The solution was simple. You told us it's more. You didn't tell us what our quota was for June. And the teacher said, oh, your father's home, isn't it? Okay? So, your father's home. And then I came in and I did a thing with them where it was a store where I put them in groups like this. And I said, okay, here it is. You got to get your quota of 80 of these items by the end of March. You sold this much in January, this sold much in February. How much more do you need to sell to make your quota, and what are you going to do about it? Better believe they learned subtraction. She just graduated from school, and I still have kids coming going, do you remember when you came in and you were the manager of the store and you made us do that? That's the experience. Tie it to an experience. But here's the problem with English language arts. You get standards like this. And we have to read this. Right? Do you guys read this in 4th grade, Where the Red Fern Grows? Anyone? Okay.
Not here.
5th grade? Huh?
Not here.
Not here? Okay. The problem is we have books like this, and we have to do this with the standard. How do we get this to where the book basically becomes the focus and we can address that standard? That's the worst question we can ask the kids. What's the theme of the story? Because it's a subjective question presented as an objective question. Because basically I can say this, do you want what I think, what you taught me, or what the book says? Okay? Now, what I do with it is I came up with this, where I can take the standard, which is this, determine the theme of a story, drama, or poem from details of the text, including how characters in a story or drama respond to challenges. What I then do is this, for English language arts. I go online and see what the credible sources are saying about the book. So what I found is, going to different sources, is that Where the Red Fern Grows by Wilson Rawls addresses the following themes. And I give the kids the themes. Theme is probably one of the hardest things to teach kids, because it's an abstract concept. And the way I teach it is, say, okay guys, here we read chapter 2. One of the themes of Where the Red Fern Grows is loyalty and love. Well, what's loyalty? What's love? What is love? Right? Okay? Okay, look up in the dictionary what is the definition of both. Okay, what is the social definition? Have you ever felt loyalty to someone? Have you ever felt love? What's the religious definition? What's the philosophical definition? So we get that cemented, and I go like this. As you read this section, this chapter 2, answer, how does Where the Red Fern Grows by Wilson Rawls address the following theme? Loyalty and love. Go. They read, and I walk the room. Now I have my affirminators. You know what my affirminators are? My low-level readers. Because what I do is I give them the textual evidence. And I say, this is what they're looking for. This is my small group. Don't tell them until tomorrow. Why does this support the theme of love? Small chunks. Every time I do that with a child, you know what they do with me? Mr. Francis, can I read the rest of the book? I said, it's up to you. It's your choice. Because all I want you to do is do this for me. No, this sounds interesting. I want to read the rest of the book. And they read it, because reading is no longer a chore. Reading becomes a choice. This also becomes my formative assessment, because I say to the kids, okay, in this section, it addresses the theme of this. What is this? And we talk about the larger idea, and then I say, okay, now, how does it address this? Now, my kids who are older, they may go online and go find Schmoop and Cliff Notes and Spark Notes, and I tell them, you have to make this and give this your own argument. You can't just copy it from a book. If you have to, you have to say according and give the textual evidence from it. Okay? But do you notice that little question on the bottom there? Do you see that little question on the bottom there? See what it asks? Which do you think is the central message or premise, and why? Why am I doing that with them?
That's personal. That's
personalized. It's also effective. But what else?
You're also backing up whatever you thought the theme was.
Right.
You're going.
Right. This also prepares kids for the way they're assessed on assessments. Because the two combination, they go like this. What is the central idea or theme of the story? And you have 4 choices. Which parts of the text address that theme? That's where you have this. So I give them the answer because I want them to understand larger ideas. And these are basically what I call the universal ideas, the universal questions. So when they see that, they know how to go and look back at the text and find the evidence. Because it's not about just determine the theme and story of drama. It's about more so how do characters, story, and respond. How does that support the theme? So talk amongst yourselves right now. What do you think about this? How do you see I went from this to this to this? Talk amongst yourselves. Would anyone like to start off by saying, I see what you're saying here, but... Anyone? It's okay to say that to me because here's the thing. When I'm teaching, I need to make sure we're all on the same page. And the way I say that with my kids is this. I see what you're saying, but... And it's okay, to challenge me. Like when you request those questions, that's awesome because you know what? I'm not going to learn unless you ask me questions and challenge me. Okay? But I'm going to tell you straight right now, this came out after my book. My book does a way, it's called show and tell. And I had a teacher who goes like this, I can't do it your way. And then I said, wow, wait a minute, that just ruined the whole PD. Because she's not focused on making questions, what is she focused on? Doing it how? My way. So what we did was we came up with this, and I found out, I'm like, wow, this is actually a great way to do English language arts questions. Okay? You also can do it with the standards, by doing it this way, in which I can have the statement of objective where it says, analyze and interpret data on natural hazards to forecast future catastrophic events and inform the technologies to mitigate their effects. I'm going to give the kids, because the facts are in there. Because we're doing what? Natural hazards, right? That's what we're teaching, right? What about natural hazards? They can be what? Okay. Data on natural hazards can be analyzed and interpreted to forecast future catastrophic events and inform the development of technologies to mitigate their effects. That's the enduring understanding. That's the enduring understanding. That's the fact. You're going to go and tell me, know where I got that from? I just rewrote the standard into a statement, turned it into a question. Or, yes, your question? Okay. Or I could take part of it, look at the other verb. Okay? Forecast future catastrophic events by analyzing and interpreting the data on natural hazards. Well, future catastrophic events could be forecasted. You're going to now go and investigate how. And I can even take text from my textbook, which is right here. Look at this. Natural processes can cause sudden or gradual changes to Earth's systems, some of which we may adversely affect humans. This is all the facts. I want them to go further. So first thing I'm going to ask them is this. Well, what's a natural hazard? The second thing, see, it says natural processes can cause sudden or gradual changes to Earth's systems, some of which may adversely affect humans. Well, how can natural processes cause sudden or gradual changes to Earth's systems? And how could those sudden and gradual changes adversely affect humans? Through observation knowledge of historical events, people know where certain of these hazards, and here's the examples, are likely to occur. Well, how could observations of historical events help people know where the following events are likely to occur? Do you see how I flipped it? This is the textbook. This has them go, it's a term down south here, certain school district came up with. It's called beyond textbooks. This is beyond the textbook. Okay? You can even do it in math.
Oh.
You, you could say, this is what you're going to do. Really? Well, yeah, well, don't worry, because decimals of thousands can't be read and written using the following. You're going to tell me, you see how I changed the standard to an enduring understanding to a question? You see how I took statements and said, okay, here's the facts. You need to go further? This is one way to turn statements of objectives and statements of facts into questions. One way. I'm going to show you another way later. So you want to see some other methods too?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to show you some other methods that you might go, aha, that's a little bit better. Okay? But I also want to show you this, where basically now we're going to go into how we're building this and how we teach this. So I want to show you how I do this with math. So we're going to go from basically, we just did the extended learning, and now I'm going to go into how you access and build prior knowledge. I want you to watch how I do this. Okay? First, let me ask you this. Is this a good question? What is it? It's a performance objective. Is this a good question? It's a statement. It's actually a standard. Now, is this a good question? This is an item. This is an item. Based upon how you do this and whether you can answer correctly means you know and understand this. Is that fair? Is it? That one item can basically tell me whether you know and understand this? Okay. Well, I'm making you think right now, which is what I want you guys to do. But the other thing I want you to do is think about how we traditionally teach this, which is basically we show the kids this, and we show the kids this, and then we do this, and we show them that. We say, okay, everybody got it? Okay, good. Now I want you to do 1 through 25 of these. And if you get them all correct, you must meet the standard. Is that the way we traditionally learn math? Teacher does this. And the way we teach this is often this. You think about this. Okay, first thing I do is I stack my numbers, thank you. And then, okay, then I want to take 8 times 2. That's where I start. And I make 8 times 2 is what? Okay, I put down the 6. I carry the... Okay, 8 times 4 is? Plus 1. Okay, see, I lost everybody. Look at you. You just totally went like this. I mean, that's totally what happens. Yes?
See, it's because if you know how to solve that problem, you can solve a million of them.
Right.
Why give them 20 of them? Why? Why do we solve? Why?
Okay, so...
If you know how to do it, you know how to do it.
So I want to show you guys how I learned to teach math, because I learned this in my first year, because this makes me sound like this, actually.
You will learn by the numbers. I will teach you.
Okay? There's now what they say is more than one way to do math. And a lot of us probably learn this way, and we say that's the way we're comfortable with, right? Okay? Now, to tell you the story, my first year of teaching was in Blythe, California. Does anyone know where Blythe is? Okay? I often say to people, when you drive to Disneyland, okay, and you stop off for the rest stop and the McDonald's after college, that's Blythe. Well, it's hot, but it's also a very large migrant farming community. It was like a John Steinbeck novel. Okay? And what happened is that when I got there, it was California rules. And California rules, if you don't have enough kids in the school, last hired, first fired. So they said, Eric, you just moved out here from New York. I was 26 years old. And they said, here's, if you want to stay, what you can do. They said, you can teach 7th grade language arts, 6th grade language arts, and 2 7th grade math classes. I said, I'm not a math teacher. They said, we'll write a letter. Don't worry about it. Okay? So I get into my math class, and again, like I said, I'm teaching like the Fonz and the Sergeant, and the kids were all looking at me like I'm speaking a foreign language, because I was. And finally, one child, 20 minutes in, was brave enough to raise her hand and say, Maestro, no comprende. And I said, anyone comprende? And they all went like this. And I went to my principal. I said, the kids in my class can't speak English. And he goes, oh, I forgot to tell you. Yeah. I said, I don't speak Spanish. He goes, we'll write another letter. It's all right. So I'm teaching them the traditional way, and they're calling me every name in the world. Please don't call me, and I know them. They all start with P. All right? All right, don't even. I learned some creative ways to speak Spanish that year. So one day I decided to come into class, and I asked the kids, what are the words and terms you don't know and understand? How would you phrase it as a question? And they have to write it down, and they would have to say it. So what I want you guys to do right now is at your table working together, what I'd like you to do is this. Look at those standards up there and identify what are the words and terms and details you don't know and understand. Think about a 5th grader. How would you phrase it to me as a question? Go. Write it down. Okay, so I'm going to show you what I did with this. Because as you guys are writing down this, you're doing what my students will do. This is why I introduce a math lesson. Every math unit I have, I introduce it like this. I show them the standard. I show them the wording of it, because that's what they see on assessments. This is your instructions. This will change. Okay? And then I put this up. Now, back in the day when I was teaching this, the first time I did this, I had a chalkboard. And my chalkboard was what I called their student-centered vocabulary. And what I would ask the kids is I would say, what are the words and terms and details you don't know and understand? My pre-planning was this. I want to show you how I pre-planned. I would write down and pick out all the words and terms I thought the kids would not know and understand and come up with the detailed questions. And then when I came to class, my kids saw that. And then I say, okay guys, what is the words and terms and details you don't know and understand? How would you phrase as a question? So right now, what I'd like you to do is someone tell me, what is a word or term or detail you don't know and understand? And how would you phrase it as a question?
What is algorithm?
Okay, wait. Okay, what was your first one?
What is algorithm?
Is it what is algorithm or what is an algorithm?
What is it?
Okay, right, because we need to be careful when we drop our articles. Because my kids, when they would do it, they go like this, and I'm not making fun, I'm saying this is straight. They go, algorithm. I say, okay, now how'd you phrase that as a question? What algorithm? Okay, where's your linking verb? What is algorithm? Okay, where's your article? What is an algorithm? Okay, now please say it with me. What is an algorithm? I'd write that under substantive terminology. And then another kid would say to me this, Maestro, what's fluently mean? I said, okay, where's that linking verb? What does fluently mean? Okay, what is or what does? What does fluently mean? And I put it up there. So I'm helping them. It's the speaking and listening. So I was doing the language objective. And kids would then say to me, Maestro, what is the standard algorithm for multiplication? I would put this there. Okay? Now by the end of this experience, this is what I would come up with at the end. I would write it on the board and say, these are the questions you guys need to address and respond to before we even get into this. Because how are they supposed to do that if they don't even know what these words mean? Okay? Now, here's where it's interesting. Some of my kids might not say multiply. Or I might have a kid who says, what does multiply mean? And I'm going to have that kid in my class go like this. You don't know what multiply means? And I'm going to go like this then. Okay, hotshot. What does multiply mean? What do you think they're going to tell me?
Oh, love it.
What do you think they're going to tell me? Times. What does that mean? You know, times. What does that mean? You don't take a number with an X, and another number, and you equal. Okay? Can anyone else explain to me what multiplication is? Grouping. Well, what's grouping? I don't know, my third grade teacher did that thing with the circles and the little circles, and you had all that. Okay?
Arrays.
They're arrays. Okay, what do you mean by arrays? It's when you take the box and you, okay, wait a minute. I put it up on the board. You know why? Because here's the thing. That's where I have to assess prior knowledge. The gaps in learning can be filled with vocabulary. I strongly believe that. Okay? That's where I do it. So I build background knowledge through academic vocabulary. I learned that from an English language learner perspective. So when I taught like this with my kids, I'm going to show you what else I used to do with them. So once they got this, and they had to write, and they had to read, they had to tell me in English, it took a long time, but it's okay because I don't teach them a lot of problems. Because then once we got that all done, I had to rephrase these as questions. And I would go and make my grid because I want them to demonstrate and communicate. It's not just do the math, it's how and why is the math done. And I say it's show and tell. What are the verbs you see in those objectives? Perform, what else? Multiply and. So those are the verbs I'm working with. Now what am I performing? Operations. Multi-digit whole numbers will be multiplied. Standard algorithm will be used. The condition is they're going to perform operations with what? Multi-digit whole numbers. They're going to fluently multiply multi-digit numbers doing what?
Using the
standard algorithm. And they're going to use the standard algorithm to do what? See? The thinking question that always gets me thinking, other than why, is how, could, and can. Take it away. Now I got my questions for the unit.
Put it back. We have that, right?
Yep. This is the other way to do it. Yep. No, this is in your workbook. We're going to do this afternoon. Okay? Now, let me show you how I taught math. Day one, they came in after we did it, and I go like this. Okay, guys, here's the deal. I have a model with you. I want you guys to be like my 5th grade students. Okay, guys, here's the deal. What'd I do there? Talk at your table right now and explain what did I do there. Go. Everyone go right now, please. Now, if you noticed, I walked the room while you're working on this. This took all of class because of one reason. Number one, you're conversing about it. Number two, you write it down. Communication is the key to learning. Now, I would ask at the end of this class, now how many guys like it this way? How many of you guys like doing math this way? How many guys don't like it this way? Tomorrow, I'm going to show you another way. Do you promise to come back? That's what I say to my kids. That's how I just do stuff with the kids. The kids just go like this. Mom, I got to go to school. I don't know what he's going to ask or what he's going to show us. That's what got my kids. I mean, I had parents go, my kid cries when I want him to keep him home. You know, because I don't know what he's going to ask. So the next day they come in, and I keep this up there, and I do this with them. And then I say to my kids, what do I do? My kids talk like this with math. They say this. You broke up the second factor into its place value. Or you would say you broke up the multiplier into its place value. And you multiplied the top number by the place value. To make it easier, you dropped the zeros and then brought them back when you got your products. And that's how I got 215,716. I taught my kids to talk like that and communicate their math that way. So, because they know how to speak like mathematicians, they know how to think like mathematicians. Because mathematicians, they don't solve problems. They tell you how and why problems can be solved. How many guys saw the movie Beautiful Mind? Remember when John Nash smashed his head against the window? It's not because he doesn't have the answer. He has the answer. He just can't prove it mathematically. Or the theory of everything, where Stephen Hawking says they're all black holes. That's the answer. Now I need to prove it mathematically. My favorite thing when I tell my kids is this. How could 2 + 2 = 5? How could it equal 5?
Another base.
The value of
Like when base 10 if you add another base.
Well, what's 2.4 rounded?
Oh.
What's 2.3 rounded?
Yeah, exactly.
What's 2.4 plus 2.3? Now rounded. And what allows me to do that is working with triangles. Keanu? Whoa. There you go. See? Now, after this, I go like this to my kids. How many like it this way? How many like it this way? Tomorrow, I'm going to show you another way. When you come back, I do this. And I do this.
Yes.
And I do this. And my kids explain to me like this. 5 times 3 is 15. I have 4 zeros add to the end because I know 100 times 100 equals 100,000. Yes?
Do you invite them to invent their own ways?
Oh, yes. Or look up another way that I don't teach them. Okay? But here's the thing, because there's another way that I can't do. It's called stick multiplication. With the lines, I can't do it, but that doesn't mean someone else can't. So they would have to go out and find it. Okay? Now, then at the end of this, I say this. How many guys like it this way? How many guys like it this way? How many like it this way? Because tomorrow I'm going to show you a way it's going to frustrate your parents. I promise you it's going to frustrate your parents. In fact, your homework is going to go home and frustrate your parents. I said, will you come in and see it tomorrow? And then I do this. See?
No, no entiendo eso.
Yeah, wait till you see how I teach it to you. Because I spend the whole class on one problem doing it this way. And I go like this, don't get scared, guys, because guess what?
It's the same number.
I'm going to give you the answer. Now, I'm going to do a gradual release of responsibility with you guys. I do on the first part, we do on the second part, you do on the last part. Ready? Okay. Class, what is 5 times 3?
15.
Okay, I'm going to put the 1 on top and the 5 on the bottom because the 1 is a 10 and the 5 is a 1. The 10 will go on top, the 5 goes on the bottom. 3 times 4 is what, class? 12. So where do I put that 10? The 1, because it's a what? And the 2 is a?
1.
Okay, good. What's 3 times 2?
6.
Okay, is there a 10 in that product? So if I don't have a 10 in a number in the tens column, I put a 0, and then I put the 1 down. Okay, so 5 times 3, 1, 5. 3 times 4, 1, 2. 3 times 2, 0, 6. That's the I do. Now watch. We do. 9 times 5 is what?
45.
Where am I going to put the 4? Why? Because it's a 10. Where am I going to put the 5? Why? Right. 9 times 4 is what?
36.
Okay, so where am I going to put the 6?
On the bottom.
Why? Okay, and then I'm going to put the 3 on the? Because it's actually 10, and that 3 is actually not 3, but 30. Okay, good. What's 9 times 2?
18.
So where would you put the 10? And that number is? Okay, and the 8 is a? So I put that on a? Okay, now you do. Where would you put the 10? Where would you put the 1? Yes?
How do you organize the square? I only find the
Oh, it's just a
denominator.
It's just a bad graphic. It's because they have lines diagonally and lines straight.
No, my question
Oh.
is, I don't know how you organize this.
Uh-huh.
Numerador.
But how do I get the answer?
But no, where do you
How
get
do
the
you select
numbers?
those numbers?
Okay, I'm going to show you how I do that.
They're not fractions.
Okay? Now watch this. This is what I tell my kids.
They're not fractions.
This takes
They're not fractions.
20 minutes to take the kids through this. And they get it. Now they got the pattern. So what I'm going to do show you is this. See the line that pipes diagonally? That's the direction you're going to add. So 6 plus what? Nothing is what?
6.
Good. 8 plus 1 is?
9.
Plus 2?
11.
Carry the 1.
Oh,
Where did you put
I'm
the
confused.
one?
Just carry the one.
Because, see, 6 plus nothing is 6. 8 plus 1 is 9. Plus 2, 11. Carry the 1. 1 plus 6 is plus 1. Plus 6.
14.
Plus 3.
17.
Plus 0.
17.
Bring down to 7. Carry the 1.
Oh, there it is.
1 plus 0 is
1.
plus 2.
3.
Plus 3.
6.
Plus 5.
11.
Plus 4.
15.
Bring down to 5. Carry the 1.
Okay.
1 plus 1 is
2.
plus 5.
7.
Plus 4. Carry the 1. 1 plus 1 is?
2.
You know who has the hardest time with all these up here is us. Guess which way the kids love the best? That. Okay? It's Sudoku, yeah. Okay? The thing is this. This takes me all week. This takes me all week, seriously.
But they learn it.
Right. And then on Friday, I ask them this. Which method works best for you and why? And they have to go and tell me, I like this way, or I like this way, or I like these two ways, I don't like this way, and have to tell me why. The following week, they come in and they see this. Same questions, problem has changed. I said, how could you prove this number sentence is true? And they get to choose their way. And then I would ask them, how could you prove this in more than one way? Okay? The next day, I do this. How could you reorganize these numbers and prove the number sentence is true? So they can do this. They can do this. They can do this. See how they're changing the numbers? They even change the numbers between. So they're creating their own mathematical problems with the same numbers. Sometimes they can keep it constant and just change the first number, or like I said with that one, see how they kept the first number constant and just changed the second?
Yeah.
Okay? And they solve it any which way they want. Okay? Now, want to see complex? Watch this one. What if 1 was added to each 100, subtract 2 from each 10, and added 1 to each 1? What if 1 was added to each 100, you subtracted 2 from each 10, and added 1 to each 1? If you guys are going like this, I know you're learning. Because that means you're thinking, you're trying to figure it out. If you go like this, I lost you. And I watch your body language. And I've been watching your body language for this. When I ask you guys a question, you all perk up. When I tell you to do something, you all get really submissive and loud. It's true. Because when I tell you so, and that's why with my kids, that's why I ask questions. Because if I say this, add 1 to each 100, 2, subtract 2 from each 10, add 1 to each 1. Look at all you guys, you just did, look at you. You just did it. Did you do it on purpose?
No, I'm trying to. I have to listen.
Right, but you go like this.
Because I concentrate.
Right. But it's also a form of submission. You want to spark the thinking. So if I have you do this, and if you go like this, that's awesome because you're really thinking. You're just verbalizing it. So then I'll show my kids this. Okay, guys, this is what I mean. Now do it. So they can think about it any which way possible. Now, I come back and do this. But I say this to them. Pick 5 to solve and answer those questions.
And you're now the coolest teacher ever.
So now Monday, now what?
You're the coolest teacher ever.
So on Monday, they pick this. And then on Tuesday, they could pick this. And on Wednesday, they could pick this. And on Thursday, they could pick this. And those last 5 they don't pick, that's their test. So they never get out of it. Okay? So talk amongst yourselves. How do you see this working in your classrooms? Talking amongst yourselves right now. How do you see this working in your classrooms? Important question. Who's doing most of the work here? That's what it is. And you will walk the room. You will walk the room. More importantly, if somebody is goofing off or not on task, you still can use questions. And I did it before my friend passed, and I'm going to do it with you. Okay? So let's say I'm working with them over here, and you're not on task. I go like this. What's your name?
Anel.
Anel?
Anel.
Okay.
She's a trouble one. She's a trouble.
Anel. What are you doing?
Nothing.
What should you be doing?
Working.
What happens if you don't?
I get a 0.
Okay.
You're horrible.
Is that what you want?
No.
So what should you do?
Start working.
So we're not going to have this conversation again, right?
I don't think so.
There you go. See? She went from joking around to like, whoa, he's like serious. And you also I didn't go like this. I didn't go, excuse me. I mean, I've done this whole class. I go like this. What are you guys doing?
Nothing.
Right. What should you be doing?
Working.
Okay.
Anel, you got nervous? Yes, I did.
You know, but that's the funny thing. You know what my kids hated? I go like this to them. I go like this, said, oh, I guess I can treat you like young adults and have you guys work independently, and I can work the room just being a facilitator. I have to become the direct instructor. Everybody get back into rows. Now I'm going to tell you everything you need to know, and you better copy down what I'm about to say. Oh, those kids, they like, I go, unless I can trust you to work on your own and be young adults about this. Can I trust you?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
You're not going to betray my trust, right?
No.
See? All the directive with that. And what I also used to do with students is this. I used to have to write them up. Sometimes it happened. And I'd say, are you really going to turn me into that teacher? And I would write them up. And I'd write down what they did. And I'd say to the student this. How far does this go? Because you see, I'm going to put it right here. And you tell me how far it goes. And then he'll come at the end of the class, hopefully, and go like this. So, Mr. Francis, you're not going to send that down. I said, well, not today. But this is my insurance policy. You decide for me how far it goes, okay? And then we have another day. It's a good day. And I'll go like this. Hey, Eric. Good job. See? Because they know this, and they choose it. That's the thing also about my principals. My principals knew this. If a student left my classroom, that was for my protection. Because I was about to lose my cool. Okay? And I didn't do it very much. And I tell you this, my principal used to come down. I used to do this as a principal too. Why are you here? Why are you here? You're from Mr. Francis' class? Get in my office. You know, because they know it's the last minute. Okay? All right. So, we've now extended our learning. I've shown you a little about extended learning. Now we're going to get to the very big basics of it, which is basically, this is the foundational part of it. This is where we're going to take our standards that we've chosen and build our questions. Now here's the interesting thing. This is not going to take a lot of work, because what you're going to do is, number one, you're going to presume nothing. When you read that standard or you read that text, you say to yourself, these kids don't know this. So this is your pre-planning. When you go to the classroom, you're going to show that standard and that graphic, and you're going to ask the kids, what are the words and terms and details you don't understand? How would you phrase it for me as a question? That's your first lesson. That serves as both your prior knowledge assessment, and it also serves as your building background knowledge. Okay? It is essential, it is important to work with vocabulary initially, because you may be the first teacher that ever took the time and effort to really have the kids understand the word. Because what happens, remember I told you about putting in kid-friendly language? Remember we were talking about that? What happens is we put it in kid-friendly language. That usually happens in K through 3. Then 4 through 5, they get there and they presume you know what this word means. And then 4 through 5 is saying, didn't you learn this in K through 3? And then they go to middle school and they say, didn't you learn anything in elementary school? And then they go to high school and they say, did you learn anything in K through 8? And they go to college, they say, did you learn anything in K through 12? And in the workforce, they said, your school did not prepare you. Okay? My question for you about this is now, whenever you see something like that, see a big word, no word is too big for a child. It's too big for adults who think it's too big for a child. My question for you is, whenever you see that word, I want you to remember this question. If not now, then when? If not now, then when? And remember, you don't have a lot of stuff to teach. They have a lot of answers to learn. So in this graphic, what I'm going to do with you is I'm going to show you guys how you can take that standard and build a student-centered vocabulary. You're pre-planning because you're preparing to go in there. But when you go in there, these are going to be blank. And the fact that you have a smart board, you could just write this on the board. And the fact that you pre-planned it, it's okay. And it takes you literally, probably takes me about 10 minutes to do something like this. And that's my planning. Because the activity is, the kids are going to have to go and look up these questions. All right? So here's what I do with ratio. Understand the concept of ratio and use rate reasoning to solve problems. What are the words and terms you don't understand up there if you were in 6th grade?
Ratio.
Ratio. Place to me as a question, please.
What is ratio?
What is ratio? What's another word? Reasoning. What does reasoning mean? I put that in academic vocabulary. What else?
What's a solve?
What is to solve? What does it mean to solve? Good. Okay. See, that's the thing. I teach the kids the meaning of the Bloom's verbs. Ever ask a kid what does it mean to analyze? Or interpret? Or evaluate? Okay? Here's what I did for English language arts. Just post the standard and say to the kids, what are the words and terms you don't know and understand? They have to use a dictionary to find these words, use the textbook to find these words, and use the textbook to get textual evidence or do research. Now some of you might say, I don't have time. You got 180 days. You got 180 days. You're teaching deeper, not volume, depth. That lesson I showed you with the multiplication, that took 2 or 3 weeks. One standard. And you don't have, if you look at your standards and say, I really don't have a lot of standards to teach. I just have a lot of stuff to give them. No, you don't. Okay? So that's the focus of it. Here's another one for science and how they break it up. There's the words, there's the terms, there's the data and details. And you might have to go online and use your own creativity and think about what they have to know. Use your own knowledge. The terminology is technical terms that's specific to that subject area. So math terms, scientific terms, English language arts terms, social studies terms. Okay? The data and details is where you have to provide explanations, examples, and evidence. Those questions generally ask who, what, where, and when. So you're recalling information. Okay? So I would say, like, what is an example? So if I go like this, watch. What does multi mean? What is a digit? Okay? What does multi-digit mean in math? Or what does digit mean in math? What does multi-digit mean in math? What is a multi-digit number? Terminology. What is an example of a multi-digit number? Data and details. See what I mean? Or if I say this, what is a hundredth? That is a terminology. If I say narrative, because that's a terminology, because you have narrative text, or you can say narrative text, informative text, argument, research, okay? In science, it's all scientific terms. The best thing about this here is that our kids see Bloom's verbs, and they don't know what it means. So what you're also doing here is that you're basically assessing prior knowledge and background knowledge. The ultimate goal for this will be that every time kids see words like this, compare and contrast, one time it will appear here depending on what standard you have. Because now they know it, so this will be fluid. You will define a verb for blooms once, and then you understand that word. So you're actually building familiarization with vocabulary. Okay? The other reason why you do it like this is because our curriculum generally pulls out terminology, or if it's English language arts, they pull out the words in the text that they decided these are the words the kids need to learn. And we teach those words without any kind of knowledge or understanding whether they understand other words that may not have been pulled out. So when I do this here, compare and contrast a fictional portrayal of a time, place, or character and a historical account of the same period as a means of understanding how authors of fiction use and alter history. And they say, what are the words and terms you don't understand, or details? They may not understand what is fiction, or what is time in literary fiction or nonfiction. They may know what time means, but can they tell you what time means in literary fiction or nonfiction? Okay? Or what is place in literary fiction and nonfiction? So you have the general words here, the general academic words here, but you have the subject-specific words here, and here is where you have to provide examples. You're building background knowledge. Think of it this way. Everything you want to tell the kids that's background knowledge, they now have to go and find. They now have to go and read, research, or report back. And as kids as young as kindergarten, they can do it. You might have to verbally guide them more. Okay? You've seen me put this grid up where it says good question stem, helping linking verb, subject, Bloom's verb, or I call hot verb, and then context. The one way I've taught you how to do this is that you look for the stem in the standard. If the stem is there in the standard, then that's your question. Okay? If the stem is there in your standard, that's the question. But sometimes we don't have the stem in the standard, in the objective. And we have to rephrase that objective into a question completely. And that's what I'm going to be teaching you guys today. When you have your standards and you want to rephrase your standards into a question, you look for two things. Number one, you look for, is there a question stem already embedded in the standard, in the objective? And two, how many verbs are in the standard itself? Because every time you see a verb, you could possibly create a question. And that's what I'm going to show you guys today.
Usually are not the questions in the standard.
What?
Usually are not there.
Yeah, the questions usually are not there. Okay? Sometimes
they are there. They're embedded.
They're embedded.
You see, they are there.
Sometimes
they are there. They're not on that format.
But sometimes the stem is not there. Right. But the question is there. It's about playing with the objective.
Yeah.
This is also going to create an authentic assessment for you. Because as you saw with the math, it's not about whether you can get 25 problems correct. It's about whether you can explain how and why those problems can be solved correctly. Okay? Because your assessments care about correct answers. Your teaching and learning is about how and why that's correct. So it's not so much the term teaching to the test is actually a misnomer because we're always teaching to some kind of test. But when we teach to the test, what we're teaching them is this: how to solve any question, answer any question, address any problem, accomplish any task, or analyze any text or topic that's presented to us. Okay? That's the big thing. And that's what these questions are going to do. The other big thing is this. your curriculum, because I saw some of you guys using Engage New York. Engage New York, I'm going to say this, is a good tool and resource. But that's your paintbrush and your toolbox. You are the artist. What I often say about Engage New York is, you better give the kids the instructional piece with the script so they know how to respond back. Okay? What you can do with it is that you lead the kids and guide the kids with questions. The best thing also you should do with it is this. If you throw out a question and you say, okay, what did I do here? Like I did with that math question and nobody's talking, you say this. Talk amongst yourselves and explain what I did here. Because more likely than not, kids are not going to go and do what I call the Horseshack. Remember Horseshack? Ooh, ooh, ooh. Okay? Am I showing my age?
Daniel Mejia,
Okay.
please come to the office. Daniel Mejia, venga a la oficina, por favor.
You know a funny story? You'd like this as a principal, because my principal was in on this. I would get these kids in my class who go like this. Ooh, 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 ooh. And I'd say, don't Horseshack me. And the kids would go, what'd you call me? And then I'd have some kids who would be so bold and they said, I'm going to go down to the principal. So the principal, so if you know, it's from Welcome Back, Kotter, if you know the character. Okay? Kotter, Mr. Kotter. All right? So my principal was in on it, and they would go down to his assistant and say this, Mr. Francis called me a name, I want to talk to the principal. And the principal assistant would go, what did he call you? He called me a Horseshack. And she'd go, oh no, I need to go tell the principal. She'd walk in, and she'd say, Eric called another kid a Horseshack. And the principal would say, all right, send the kid in. So the door would open, my principal would go like this. Hi there. Because that's what Freddie Boom Boom Washington used to do on the show. And then the kid would sit down and go like this. He'd say, Mr. Francis called me a name. What? Called me Horseshack. Where? In the classroom. Why? I don't know why. He called me the name. What? Horseshack. Where? In the classroom. Why? Because that's what Barbarino used to do. So then I would come down and we'd have the student watch an episode of Welcome Back, Kotter with us. And we'd say, did you do that in the classroom? Yeah. And then we'd say, well, then you are a Horseshack. Okay? And then we'd sign up past the class because everything would be resolved, kid would be happy. So we'd sign up past class, say, so-and-so is with the principal, Mr. Francis, signed so-and-so's mother. Because remember, Epstein used to have the note, Epstein didn't do his homework, signed Epstein's mother. So just a little bit of humor you can do with it.
Remember way too many details.
Huh?
Remember way too much.
Well, it's just fun, you know. It's just, it's really funny because my kids. Oh, I'm a movie quote person too. There's a reason why my company's there's a reason why my company's called Maverick. Okay, because my daughter's names are Madison, Avery, and Amanda, and also I'm a child of the '80s. So guess what my favorite movie is? Top Gun. To which they're just coming out with a sequel. It's called Top Gun Maverick. So get my advertising campaign's gonna be with my company. Anyway, so but he spells it CK. I spell it with a K. So anyway, but it's nice when I go out in public because people forget my name and they go like this. They go, Maverick, hey Maverick, and I go like this. Yes? So, okay. So we've learned so many different ways to answer questions that I want you just to figure out your way to start to figure out your way to do this. You know how to unwrap a standard we're using for the question stem. You know how to turn an objective into a statement and make that a question. Okay? You know how to pull the vocabulary words and terms out. Now we're going to go into how we really change those standards into an open-ended question. This is going to set the instructional focus and serve as an assessment. When you ask these questions, this is basically going to be, this is the big question you have to either answer today or you have to answer by the end of the unit. And they're all going to be standards-based. So what I would like you to do is, there's a graphic in the workbook, and I believe it's called, I'm trying to remember what it's called actually, there's so many graphics in there. This is called Developing Good Question Stems from Standards. I think it's like maybe like the 3rd or 4th page in. It looks something like this. This is going to be a question planning tool for you. Because as you can see with this, you're not only going to create your instructional focus, but you're all eventually going to create your personal question, which I'm going to show you how easy that becomes. And now we're going to say that for last. So what you do is with your standard, and I want you to pick a standard that does not have a question stem in it. Your standard should not have the words how or why. Okay? Because these are more so the deeper, more complex standards. What you do is you look for the Bloom's verbs. So in this one, what are the two Bloom's verbs you see in the standard?
Analyze, interpret.
You put that underneath your cognitive action column. So I changed the tense of the Bloom's verb with the verb of be in past tense. Now, you're going to analyze and interpret what? Data on what?
Natural hazards.
That's the subject matter you're teaching. So you're teaching that data on natural hazards can be analyzed and interpreted for what purpose?
To forecast future questions.
That sets the instructional focus of your unit. You put in the thinking question stem, which is how, and the linking verb, which is can, and read what you have there. So again, the process is this. Look for your Bloom's verb. Look at the noun or noun phrase, the topic or text you're teaching after the Bloom's verb. Everything after that is considered to be the conditions. You put in your question stem that gets kids thinking, either how or why, or some of the other higher ones, and you put in a linking verb. Now, you guys see?
Yes.
Now, sometimes there's other verbs in the standard.
Right.
Do you see some other verbs in there?
Yeah.
What do you see?
Inform.
Inform. Okay, what else? Forecast. Mitigate. What else? Or what could be derived into a verb? Development. Develop. So what happens is, when you find your verbs, forecast future catastrophic events, inform the development of technologies, mitigate their effects, I can create a whole series of questions. So when you look for all those verbs, that's how many questions you can come up with. Look how many questions I can come up with one standard. You have to play around with the sentence a bit. You have to play around with the fragments a little bit. And I can create, this is basically the essential question, and these become daily good questions. Same with math. Oops. Math, you look for the Bloom's verb, which is what?
Determine.
Determine. What am I determining?
A probability.
Right? And what's the context? What's the purpose?
Mathematical real-world problems.
How can? Now, I can also rephrase it and say this. I can teach mathematical real-world problems be solved by determining the constant of proportionality with them and saying, how could? What's the difference between these two questions?
One is the data.
Okay.
Mathematical, and the other one is
the process.
You solve by defining
Right.
the solution.
This is the process. This is the hypothetical. Okay?
Yeah.
So this is the way. This is the ways. See how I have two different questions there?
Yeah.
Still addressing that standard. Okay? In English language arts, it can be the same thing because what is the Bloom's verb you see? Analyzed. Or you have a question stem there, actually. How? If I have the question stem, I basically can drop the Bloom's verb. And I'm teaching about an author, develops in contrast, the points of view of different characters, narrators in the text. How, does, did, or could. Or I can do this. The points of view of the characters and narrators in the text be developed and contrasted by an author, how, were, or could. So what you're doing here is this. This is what you're now going to do with your standards. You're going to look for your verbs and list them in this column in past tense. Be past tense. You identify the topic and the purpose behind it, and then you come up with your question stem. And that's how you rephrase your standard. So what I'd like you to do is pick another standard, pick a new one. Try to do one without a question stem in it, and see if you can rephrase it into a good question.
Could you leave the example up?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. No, with the example.
Like this? You mean this?
Yes.
Okay, what was that?
Okay.
Or this?
It doesn't matter which one.
Yeah. Let's do this one. So what I'd like you to do is pick a standard without a question stem and try to rephrase it on that. I worked with a school district in another state in which the worst thing probably could have been told to me by a psychometrician. You know what a psychometrician is?
No.
It's someone who develops tests. The person told me, it's someone who does test data too. The person told me, well, you know, you could challenge the questions on the state assessments.
Yeah.
And I went,
We do.
really?
We have.
Yeah.
The translations on our standard, on our district assessments, we have had the district throw out certain questions because the translation.
Well, the other way I look at it is this, is that basically I look at it this way where I want to create another data source, because that's what you're also doing here is you're creating another data source. When you got a benchmark, you get 20 or 25 problems thrown at you in one sitting, okay? We don't know what's going on with that child when they sit there, okay? What I did with this district is that we rephrased the standards into questions. We used our curriculum to support the response to the standard. And basically, if they did poorly on the benchmark or state assessment, but they could do this in the classroom, now we had 4 of the data points to consider. One was that a bad item on the assessment? 2 is, why can the student do it in class, but they can't do it on the test? 3 is, what is our curriculum aligned in how we're teaching and learning it to the way they're being assessed? And the 4th is, what's going on with that student? And the other thing is we looked at and said if 20% of the kids met or exceeded or attained proficiency on that standard, because you only get 5 shots at most. Out of a 50 question, you get 5 shots to meet or exceed a standard. If you get 1 wrong, now you're meeting. If you get 2 wrong, now you're borderline. 3 wrong, you're already behind the 8 ball. 4 wrong, 5 wrong, you fell far below. Who's to say those items were good items on the assessment? So when the teacher would come into us and say, well, I taught him it, and I'd say this, okay, turn the standard into a question, give them items from the textbook, tell them to pick 5 items of their own and answer that question using that as evidence. Because now we don't have it where they picked A, B, C, or D, or how they chosen on a test. Now they clearly can explain the concept, they clearly explain the procedure, they explain the thinking behind it, and use it as textual evidence, true authentic learning. We don't have time to do writing on standardized assessments. But by writing it out, now we have another data form and evidence. And we counted out a lot of the benchmark scores with it. Because if you think about it, even Derek Jeter struck out sometimes in baseball, or Johnny Damon. Okay? My Red Sox fan there. Huh?
When he was a Yankee.
When he was a Yankee, yeah. Michael Jordan, LeBron James missed the basket. Okay? You can't knock it out of the park anytime. You can't treat your assessment like you're in a batting cage or you're shooting hoops. Okay?
So what do you recommend when the AZ Merit scores are given to us after our kids have moved on to the next grade?
That's a hard, challenging thing. I would look at it. I would basically have also the qualitative conversations with your teachers and say basically this. If this is the way I usually do things with assessments, is that I let the teachers, I would let the teachers who are getting the kids this year look at last year's assessments. They go through it, they analyze it, then they present it back to the teachers last year and say, okay, so what's going on here? And they can explain that. So that's how you have that data dialogue. You also can craft it, and basically if you think about that background knowledge with the vocabulary, because all the things you need to know and understand are in those standards. Okay? So if you ask them and say, what are the words and terms you don't know and understand, and they don't understand something like rational numbers, or they don't understand something like rounding or estimation, now you know why they might have gotten that question wrong.
Well, the kids have moved on, so
right.
We have a new batch of kids, so I don't see where we could do that.
Because what happens now is that batch of kids has now become the next grade level's batch of kids.
Right. So
and then that's why you have those data dialogues, because when you have the data dialogues, it's not just supposed to be horizontal, it should be vertical.
You're talking about the new batch that we're getting?
Well, no, for example,
we would be sharing with
we
you
would be
guys
sharing
your
with
new
them.
kids.
I understand data.
Well, I understand that, but the conversation I want to have, for example, if we've got benchmarks that we do
right.
that are district driven, and we get immediate data and feedback on those, and then we think our kids are prepared, and they go into AZ Merit, and then we cross our fingers. We don't know. We don't know. So what if we're preparing them well for the school district standardized test, but we could be doing a better job for the AZ Merit? And we don't know about that disconnect, because that data, we don't get that data until the summer, and by that point we're focused on our new batch, not so much on our old batch.
Right. So what you're doing that with looking at your old, what you call your old batch,
right.
When I would look at that, I would be reflective of me as a teacher, an honest reflection of myself as a teacher. That's how I look at it, when to look at my old batch. What do I need to do this year? What worked, what didn't, okay? You're valuable to the next grade level because they're looking at it and saying, hey, what did they not get or what do they need more work on? And you can map your curriculum that way to say, you know what, I'm going to start the year not by page 1, chapter 1 in the textbook, but where was the deficiency, the greatest deficiency, and build on that and about extended learning time. So, right. So what you should be always doing is you should always be having the horizontal conversations within your grade level, but also the vertical conversations where you're going to the grade level above or below, or the one below is coming to you and saying, hey, I'm seeing this from the kids last year. That's that whole PLC conversation as well. Okay? And also when you make your PLC goals, really make your goals systemic where you can say, if this is the ceiling of assessment for a PLC goal, well, what are the objectives I need to get to there? And if they're not meeting that goal, then where's the gaps? That's a whole unwrapping of the standards. This process also will not also get you into the, what we like to call the weeds of reteaching, okay? If you think about it, when I put that standard on the board, with an example, okay? And I ask kids, what are the words, terms, and details you don't know and understand? You're not reteaching, you're assessing prior background knowledge. And if you remember, the kids build the background knowledge actively. When I'm talking at you and I'm explaining to you and I'm reteaching, I don't have your attention for the most part. That's human nature. And I get it, we're adults. When I'm talking, and I talk for a long period of time, human nature, you go like, exactly. Human nature, you go like, you know, or you just go like this, or you tune it out. But if that child is actively working, and you're with them, and you gotta walk the room, I mean, you'll never lose your voice, but you will be dead tired at the end of the day, and you will burn calories. Okay? I mean, looking at my watch right now with my circles. Okay? That's the thing, is that essentially you want to be able to walk the room. You're not reteaching or saying, I got to go over this again. What you're doing is you're filling that void, because what grade do you teach? Fourth. Okay, so this child in your class has had K through 4 of gaps coming in there right now. No fault on K through 3, but K through 4 of gaps. Your thing is, first of all, looking, okay, here's the ceiling of assessment. Now, what are the gaps I need to fill, or we need to fill together to get to that ceiling of assessment? See what I mean? And it's not about, I don't have time to go back in it, because here's the thing. You got to go back and spend the time, because if they don't know, how are they supposed to apply and analyze and evaluate? And it's as simple as just saying, what is it you don't know and understand? And you might have to look at your ceiling of assessment and then say, okay, I need to go backwards and go drill it right back. But you're not teaching it, you're asking questions. So I'd say to my student, what is addition? Okay, what is a multi-digit whole number? Okay, what does it mean to add? How are numbers added together? Okay, so what happens when I have a number that's a 1-digit and a number that's a 2-digit? What happens when I have a 2-digit and a 2-digit? What happens when I have a 3-digit and a 3-digit? See how I'm building it back? I'm not even teaching. I'm having a student. The onus is on them. They should be dead exhausted by the end of the day learning, not from you teaching. You should be dead exhausted from walking. So, does that help? Yeah, just that vocabulary, that's the big thing. I'm telling you, if you do the academic vocabulary, if you build the background knowledge of the academic vocabulary, you will fill the gaps. Then it becomes, unfortunately, a crapshoot. Is that a good item? Is that not a good item? You also got to remember, it's a standardized test. Not everyone's supposed to get 100. If everyone gets 100, what are they going to do? Raise the standard. Okay? Raise the standard. Create different forms of assessment, different measures, qualitative. Another thing for social emotional, what I used to do with my students, and this really helped them a lot, I used to go like this. Meet, exceed if you want to, or in this way. Proficiency, proficiency, approaching proficiency, 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 exceeding proficiency, proficiency. Actually, I never said approaching. I always said proficiency or exceeding. And when I would do that, my students would go like this. Well, why did you tell me I was going to exceed proficiency if I want to? And I said, because that's a choice. You don't have to exceed. You want to. And then I have kids who go like this. Well, why did you say I was only going to be proficient? Do you think you can exceed? Yeah. Great. And a lot of time I did that as a motivating factor. And I can tell you a lot of my kids felt that way. They said, Mr. Francis, you know what? It wasn't that I was confident that I knew it, it's that you made me feel confident going into it. So my kids, I would be like this. I'd say to my kids, I'd say all this fun stuff. Like say, I'll give you 25 problems, but I'd teach you number 26. And they go, what's number 26? I go, I don't know. You don't know either. But when you see it, you'll know it. And then all the kids would come after the assessment go like this. Whoa, Mr. Francis, there were a lot of 26s on that test. And I got it. See what I mean? That confidence building. It's anxiety. I have test anxiety. Anyone else have test anxiety? You know? All the marbles. That's a lot. That's a lot of pressure put on people. Okay? Again, show your evidence. Show your evidence. And if the assessment, if there's something where you consistently see on the assessment that the kids are doing well in my class but not on the assessment, then I need to look at myself. And I need to say, am I teaching the kids to the level or to the expectations that they'll be assessed? Because at the end of the day, it's not about me. I can think about all these great ways, I can have all these feelings about assessment, but I do have a responsibility for that, and I have to be reflective of me. Like, it's funny, because like after I do PDs, like with you guys, I know I'm digressing, like people come to me and go like this, Eric, that was great, that was fantastic. I'm first thinking like, this is what I need to do next time. I'm coming back here on Friday, I'm already thinking in my head, okay, this is what I need to do next time. Every time I do a PD, it's always being reflective. So, I'll get off my soapbox now.
We were a good 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, okay, good. Anyone else? Question? Who else would like to share their question? You got, why don't you pick someone to share their question?
Pick someone.
Has Kinder gone yet? Kinder, no hablado.
They've gone? So what standard did you guys have?
Primero no han hablado. Primero.
Science? Okay, so what was your standard?
Extended tools such as rulers, thermometers, magnifiers, and balances to be bigger.
Okay.
So first question, how can simple tools be used to collect data?
Right.
How could rulers, thermometers, magnifiers, balances be used to collect data?
Right, and you can even split those up into separate questions. Okay.
And the next one, how could data be collected using the following simple tools?
Right.
Rulers, magnifiers, thermometers. And the last one is, how can data be collected using simple tools?
Good. Okay, so your focus is changing because it always goes from tools and then data. Okay, now, what if I told you the question that will challenge kids to think more at the highest, deepest, most complex level is also the easiest question you can create? What if I told you that? That the question that is the highest, deepest, and most complex for the kids to address and respond to is the easiest question you can create.
So why? Why?
Huh?
So why?
Why?
Not yet.
Okay.
What is?
Watch this.
What does it mean to you?
Okay? Watch this. Our question stems has focused on this. Okay? Now we're going to get into this area. This is what we call in terms of personalized learning. Okay? This is where you take the standard and you put it in that grid up there. See that standard there? I'm going to put 3 words in front of it that's going to personalize the learning, and that's also going to make it the most complex and creative. Ready? Watch this. Now everyone read it out loud, please.
How could you analyze and interpret data on natural hazards to and incorporate development technologies to innovate your
That's STEM. That's STEM. Okay? How many guys say you do STEM? How many guys are using a kit?
You're using the SPOS kit?
Okay, you gotta be careful because I ask you this. Are you doing STEM or IKEA?
What's IKEA?
What do I mean by that?
Build your own.
IKEA, it doesn't matter what you do, you know you're going to come out with a Scandinavian bookshelf. True STEM is that creative design. How could you solve something? What you're doing with that is scientific inquiry. Right. Engineering design is I can give the kids a problem. Like I said, what could you do to predict, prevent, and protect people from dust devils? Dust storms. That's STEM. That's STEM. What could you do to protect, prevent, and predict, protect, and prevent natural hazards? Okay? I did a thing in Yuma where I go like this to the kids. Why should we be investing in beachfront property right now in Yuma?
Because of the fault from California.
You know what those kids at Yuma Elementary realized? There are actually companies out there buying land cheap because they may not experience it, their kids may not experience it, their grandparent kids may not experience it, but their great-grandkids, they're going to have some great beachfront property. Okay?
It's terrible.
It's a terrible thing about it, but there's actually, you know what the kids actually learn? There's actually people who make their business off natural hazards. You know how many people right now are calculating, figuring out what to do with the volcano in Hawaii once that stops erupting? And the land, because no one's going to want it, and then they're going to go and get it, and then it's going to get built up, and they're going to have resorts.
Well, aren't they selling property on the moon too?
Yeah, exactly.
And trips.
Yeah.
And trips, and they're already sold.
Actually, you know what? I had a great, one time I did this with my students. I said, how can you turn history into science fiction? And they said, well, how do you do that? And I said, okay, fine. Why did we declare independence from Britain? They said, well, it's because it's unfair that we had to do Britain laws across the ocean. I go, okay, now, what do you do when you're a colony in space and you're still following the laws of the United States of America? See? Okay? So that's the simplest thing. So when you guys have your standards, anytime you have your standard, determine, yes, do you have any question? Oh, okay.
I was just saying, how could you determine?
Right. That's the simplest thing to do with your standards. All you got to put is 3 letters in front of your standards. How could you? Or you could say, what kind of original problem can you pose and present that involves determining the constant proportionality, okay? So you can create word problems. What kind of original narrative or text or what kind of model could you develop and use to analyze and interpret data? That's all you do. So you're using these stems here and putting that in front of the standard. And you create your project-based learning, your STEM, your engineering design, and you're having the kids go beyond the standard. Okay? Or for example, what kind of literary analysis could you write and present that analyzes how an author develops and demonstrates their thing? So basically, all you have to do is put 3 letters in front of these, or put one of the create stems in front of these. You got your deeper learning. So what I'd like you to do now is, with that standard there, choose your create. Go look at in the workbook. You have this here. Choose one of these and just put it in front of the standard. So go ahead. Don't make it more complicated than it is. The thing about questions, it's kind of like your students, where basically they're basically going like this. Is this the answer you want? You know?
Yeah. I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
So I'm piecing everything together, and this is beautiful, perfect.
Gosh, you guys are so complimentary. Thank you so much.
Well, hold on.
Uh-oh.
This is awesome, but again, you're building background knowledge, so all of these things and all of these, you're getting what the kid already knows and what he can, and yes, a lot of it is investigation, but then where's a piece where you're actually, I mean, you're going to say I am teaching, and it's true, but certain new concepts, like the lattice, for instance, that's very concrete. So at one point you had to teach that in order for them to pick that, one of their options. So where does that fit in?
What that fits is this. That's why you got to monitor your teaching. Now, I told you I got my teach to a 1 to 4, but sometimes I had to go back. And I had to go, okay, who is not getting this right now?
Well, not just that, but at one point you had to teach that in order for them to figure out if they got it or not.
Right. But what this is doing is, like, I still am teaching. But what I'm doing is, I am giving the kids just enough to get them started. Sometimes we overteach.
Yeah.
Okay? Sometimes we talk too much. I'll even admit to it when I'm in a PD. Sometimes I talk too much. Okay? Because you think I get out there. You want more, basically, the kids having that discovery. Okay? That active learning.
No, and that's the part I like this is the whole thing, but then there are certain things you have to teach, like it's not exploratory, it's not, it's concrete. I have to teach you the lattice strategy.
Right.
I have to, I mean, you can't go, unless you're like, well, let's go explore and go find the lattice on YouTube, which is what they do anyway, but when do you teach, like how does that actual concrete, this is my lesson today, not all exploratory?
Well, see, what
Like,
I do with
balance?
it, so do you want to go back to the math?
Yeah, because that's more concrete, because the other
Okay.
stuff you can, but the math is a little bit more concrete
So
to
the
me,
math,
how
so
do
if you
balance
notice
that?
with the math, okay,
Like obviously go back to that one, the 3x3. So you showed them that, and they explored and they saw. But again, at one point you're gonna have to actually teach them what you did, because not all of them. I mean, some of them might have known, others are in different spots. But you're gonna actually have to teach that.
yes,
So you gave them the answer and they explored, which is awesome. I love that.
right. At the end of class,
Uh-huh.
first thing what I try to do is I have the kids play a little bit.
That's
Not-
at the beginning. So
Not
this
play,
is
but just like okay, so like I'm seeing this. They're very, not this one. They're a very visual generation and multisensory. So I'm going to go around and go like this, and I'm going to walk around. I can't do it with you guys just for the sake of time.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go like this. Say, okay, so what does it look like I did up there? I don't even know. I said, okay, let's do this together. Okay. What if I said that was 2 times 8? What would it give me? 16. Okay, so I can write down the 6, and then I'm going to multiply 8 times 4, and that's going to give me what? 32. Okay. This allows me Because there's some kids who will get it, some kids who don't, and that's why I have them work together to talk it out. And sometimes the kids can speak in a language that we can't understand, and they can't understand us. But if they can explain it to each other, that's a little bit better. Now at the end of it, I go, let's affirm what happened here, what I did here. And that's when, because usually with teaching we go like this. Okay, so we stack it, then what do? 8 times what is what? Okay, I do it backwards, where I actually let the kids kind of put it together. Okay?
So
now,
that's your teaching.
Yeah. Another thing I do is I will sometimes present the problem to the kids, and I'll have them work it out, and I'll go like this. So this is also what I teach. I go, okay, good. Now write down how you did it.
Yeah, but be
Okay,
able to,
but
in order to do that, to write it down and to, you have to have this.
No, think about it this way. Escucha. So the American model is that we do the direct instruction first. But if you look at instructional models all over the world, like the Japanese instructional, they do the direct teaching at the end. They do the exploring
That's what I wanted to know,
at the
like,
beginning.
when does
But
that begin?
he's
That was my
saying
question.
let them explore
That's
first.
my question. Okay.
See, and that's actually, thank you for saying, because that's actually where I learned it from the Japanese, is that what the Japanese does is that the Japanese presents a problem and they take it apart like a puzzle and put it back together. That's what our kids are good at. They're good at puzzles. And they know how to take it apart and put it back together. Okay? Cool. Right.
Yep, now they take it apart.
Here's how you do it, now see if you can figure out how.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, like when you put together a jigsaw puzzle, it's not that you got a bunch of pieces and let's say, let's figure out what we got here. You know, it's like putting together a puzzle. It's actually because the kids, our kids are very strategic thinkers and they don't realize it. And they're strategic thinkers because a lot of them play a lot of video games or sports. Because they know if then this, that, the other thing, and they know how to take it apart and put it back together. That's why you ever see the kids lately, these kids know how to do a Rubik's Cube better than we ever did. And they don't even have to break it apart and put it back together again, like what we did. Or peel off the stickers and repaint it, yeah, okay? That's all my cheats for the Rubik's Cube, okay? These kids can do it, my daughter, I'm like, you're a genius. That's nothing, it's a Rubik's Cube. Whop, you know, I mean, that's, yeah, that's old school. She's like, oh, that's nothing. You try to do, you know, Resident Evil and go from this level to that level to that, this level to that. Okay, see, that's the whole thing. But what you're also doing is this. In other countries, they teach you to think mathematically. They think you to teach critically, but they do this by they give you the answer. They're big into modeling. I'll tell you guys something really interesting. So I went to Singapore a few months ago, and I did this example up here to them. I said, now I know where I am. Okay, I'm in Singapore. I'm going to do some math examples up here. Please excuse my naivety. And they're like, what are you talking about? I said, you're Singapore. And they go, oh, so we're all from Singapore? That means we all know math? And I go like this, I go, look, you have a curriculum called Singapore Math. You know what they told me? It's not from Singapore. I was like, what? They had a minister of education there who put this in their curriculum, and then when he left, he brought it to the States and packaged it, and that's how he packaged it as a curriculum. Fascinating, huh? Now it's on tape, great. So that's the thing, is that basically it's how you think about it. In our foreign colleagues, what they do is this is critical thinking. It's not down an assembly line, okay? But also I want you to think about, also understand this, okay? We are creative thinkers. We invent. We create new things. Our foreign colleagues look at this, which is an American invention, and say, how does it work? Why does it work? What if I put more money into the design than I did into the technology? How could I change the market? They struggle with creative thinking. We are very creative instinctively in our hearts. That's why if you even look at our entertainment, India has Bollywood. Why? Because they can't copy Hollywood. So they take the formula and make it their own. Same with Chinese cinema. Same with Spanish cinema. All these different things. Because that's into us. Now we do two things. We invent and we imitate the heck out of it. How many superhero movies have you seen since Spider-Man? Because we found the formula and we imitate it. We need to teach our kids to think innovatively and inventively. Innovative means, how can I do it differently? Inventively is, what can I do to come up with my own way? Okay? And think.
It makes sense.
Right.
So that it makes sense.
Right. Right. See, it's not about the answer. I can put any problem up here and do this. But when I depend on this, it's basically like I'm teaching and testing in a batting cage. When I depend on this, that shows my deeper learning. So, but that whole thing about how could you, the whole point of this is this. My whole message to you is this. We are working too hard teaching. Our students need to be working harder learning. What we have done here is you have created entire units in a period of these sections that never lasted more than a half hour. Sometimes we put too much detail into planning the activity, into considering the experience. And I don't know about you guys, but when I was a teacher, every time I planned an activity, 2 out of 5 times it turned out the way I planned it. Right? And I got so wrapped up in the activity that I lost the whole thing about the experience. And it got to the point with my kids when I started asking questions and they started creating things and they started doing things and they started coming up with things. That's when the experience went deep. So much to the point that they may do well in the AZ Merit, that's great, but I want them 30 years later when they're my friends on Facebook telling me when I go out to dinner with them, hey, Mr. Francis, I remember when you did that in my class. And that's what you want to do. And you don't have to do it by making a circus. It's as simple as asking a question. Yes?
I just wanted to add, where the opportunity within the walk-in happens for us as teachers, that you are collecting data and you're using for the instruction at the end of the lesson, like you said. They're going to be exploring, they're going to be tapping into what they understand and don't understand about what is being explored, but I'm collecting data. Using to make instructional decisions.
So you
Right.
monitor and adjust.
The other thing I'm going to tell you guys, also this is teachers, when it comes to your administrators, when you guys are doing like little things in your classroom and activities, people who've been administrators or instructional coaches, we're walking up to the kids going like this. So what are you doing? So why are you doing this? You know what they're going to tell them more often than not? What do they say? Oh, yeah, because my teacher told me to. That's why you're doing it this way. Okay? I didn't get it. Well, then you're fired. So, okay? Okay, so basically, now you understand planning. Okay? This is your resources with planning. This is your focus. So when you do it, now that's a good question. You want to assess some prior background knowledge. You're teaching academic vocabulary, substantive terminology, and data and details. That's this part. This here, you're taking your standards and making them the instructional focus and summative assessment. Instead of saying to a kid, do this, you're asking them to demonstrate and communicate how and why can it be done. Here, you're extending the learning. You're doing what we call authentic literacy, and that's across the curriculum. So you're looking at the evidence in text and you're asking them to explain why. You're looking at the examples in curriculum and you're asking them to explain why or consider what if. You're looking at explanations from sources and you're asking them to make decisions. And then the last part here is personalizing learning. Again, with your academic standards, your social emotional learning, which is where you ask, what do you think, how do you feel, what do you believe? So this is also a guide, and you guys have this where you can give this to your kids, because basically if the kids say to you, what are we going to learn? This is how you learn. This is my 4 levels of learning. Familiarity, understanding, awareness, and expertise. And the questions that guide you is this, and this is where you make it student-centered. What information must you acquire? What must you know? How could you demonstrate and communicate your learning? How could you think deeply, express, and share your learning? And how could you transfer, use, and share learning in a different context and new situations? This will help you set up and have your kids. You can teach by this, you can learn like this. These guide you. Okay, if I have to do this, well, what are the academic literary words you don't recognize? Well, what are the subject-specific terms you don't understand? And what are the facts and information you need to learn? Here, what's the instructional focus or summative assessment? Why am I doing this? Okay? What's that highest level of assessment? And also, what are the steps for and gaps in learning? That helps with your PLCs, okay? Because a lot of times I see stuff like 70% or more of the kids will know their math facts 90% or more of the time by reciting them orally and in writing. Well, what does that mean? Okay? Okay? Awareness is all about the answers. So awareness is, here's the answer. Well, what's the thinking or reasoning behind that answer? How can curriculum assessment items and text strengthen and support your responses? What do credible sources and experts say, and do you agree? And also, what are the possibilities and options? What if? Should this or that? Could this or that? And then there's the personal. Again, with the standards, this is at what do you believe, feel, or think? How could you, and what could you create, design, develop, and do? This will guide it. Now, I'm going to tell you straight now, remember I said cognitive dissonance? You might be feeling it now because you're also tired. Practice. And then after a while, you're going to say this. You know what, Eric? Thanks for the workbook. I don't need it anymore. Because what we have to do, the really big secret of questioning, the big secret behind it is you have to shift your thinking. You have to look at everything in this world and go, why? And question everything. I question everything. I question stuff about the news. I question stuff about, you know, when these volcanic eruptions are happening out there, I'm going to say to them, well, what if the other islands start to erupt? Okay? Should the islands all be evacuated, or should they just evacuate one of the islands? See, that's the thing. Always ask. And it's great. And trust me, you'll get so excited about the smallest things. And that's what you want to show the kids, because you want to be excited about this. And also be creative with your questioning. Like when I taught older kids, I go like this. So how can we use a Pythagorean theorem to put out a fire? Kids will go, what? And then I made them all become fire units, and I gave them a problem. And if their calculations were wrong to rescue the people on the 4th floor where you position a ladder, you know what their homework was? They had to do an incident report why those people died because of their calculations. Talk about real world learning, right?
The ladder was too short.
Yeah, exactly. The ladder was too short. Oh, I miscalculated. I went too far, you know. And actually, I've had fire department people say, thank you for doing that, because we have to do that very thing. Okay? So the reason why you're asking questions is because of this. Remember these guys? No, they really weren't my students. But someone had these kids in their class, and this is how their teachers saw them. And they recognized their strengths and super strengths and asked questions and made these kids believe that they could accomplish anything. And these are who these kids were when these teachers saw them. Each of them had a teacher in their life that made a difference. And this is who they all grew up to be. So ask yourself, do you have a Mike Tyson in your room? Do you have a Britney Spears in your room? Do you have a Brad Pitt in your room? Do you have a future president of the United States and she doesn't know it yet? Knows what I said? What did I say? She doesn't know it yet. What if I told you you have the kid in your class who might find the cure for cancer and they can't afford to go to college? Okay? That's what you're teaching towards. Each of these people, well, for the majority of them, were not born with a silver spoon in their mouth. They had to struggle and learn to get to where they are. And they all zagged until they found a teacher who could ask the question before they could. And even after they became successful, they had to redefine themselves because they became unsuccessful. Every person up here, they experience, I don't say failure, because failure is when you don't, unsuccessful. And they had to redefine themselves. Okay? So, here's a checklist for your questions. I'm going to ask you if my questions did this, and I'm going to show you, because I've been taping you guys. I could show what you guys have been look like this whole time. Did the questions you created and the questions I ask you, did they stimulate deeper thinking? Yes. Are your questions, and did mine, deepen your knowledge, understanding, and awareness? Yes. Did I expand your knowledge, or are your questions expanding knowledge and extending thinking? Are your questions piquing curiosity, imagination, interest, and wonder? And more importantly, are your questions allowing your students to express and share the depth and extent of their learning in their own unique way? If your questions do at least one of these, you asked a good question. Now you got to watch also the way people look at you, because I've been watching you guys, and I've been told you I taped you, and I'll show you what you guys look like. Okay? Some of you guys have been kind of silent in your responses, and when I asked the question, you gave me what I called the rock. Because I'd ask a question and you go like this. You were doing that the whole time. Okay? Some of you were doing what I call the Metallica. Because I asked a question and you were going like this. See? It's instinctive. You cannot not listen to Metallica without going like this. Those of you guys who are trying to resist, you're like this right now. Look, I taught a PD up in Massachusetts at a Catholic school. A 7-year-old nun, when she heard this, was going like this. So you cannot resist Metallica. Now some of you vocalize. I heard you over here doing this a lot. And actually you two, you were doing it too. You were vocalized. You were doing what I call the CNC Music Factory. Huh, 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 huh. And some of you were doing all three. You were going like this. Huh. You were doing that a lot. You were going, huh. And some of you right now are going like this. College? Yeah, never mind. Okay, now, what do you want your kids to do when you ask a question? You want them to say what? Whoa. Okay? Whoa. Make your questions have the kids do a Keanu. When they get their response, make them go, whoa. Okay? Blows their mind. They go, whoa, when I say, how could 2 + 2 = 5? Whoa. Okay, who's the first president of the United States? George Washington. How do you know? Whoa. Okay? Yeah. Oh, it came from like Bill and Ted's.
Bill and Ted.
Yeah. But that was the only soundbite I could find on the internet. That was him going, whoa. Okay? Now, I also leave with a message, a public service announcement. And I want you guys to remember this because it's a very important message that you guys remember when you're teaching and learning with good questions. Ready?
Now we know. And knowing is half the battle.
Knowing is half the battle. It's not what you know. It's what you can do with you know. It's how and why you could use what you know. And more importantly, what else could you do with it? Thank you guys for a wonderful afternoon.
Hi, so I'm Kate Arnquist. I'm the magnet coordinator here at Davis, and we hosted Erik Francis at one of the magnet PDs earlier this year, and I found the session to be really meaningful, and I felt it's what we really need at Davis to get the next step. We have great kids, we have great teachers, but we feel like we can do even better by helping them be more engaged and helping them push themselves to learn and connect even more to their experience.